Because I'd offered to contribute $500 toward our family Christmas dinner, my son Carson exploded at me right in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how much work we've already put into planning this? We can't change everything just because you want to feel important. I've said it over and over. Just let us handle things our way for once. I watched the color drain from my husband Aaron's face as our son continued his tirade. My daughter-in-law Lucy chimed in, clearly irritated. Edith, why do you always have to interfere? Do you think our holiday plans need your money to be special? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I looked down at the designer bracelet on Lucy's wrist, the one Carson had mentioned cost nearly $3,000, and at the brand new luxury SUV they'd just parked in the driveway. Something inside me snapped. After decades of giving everything to my family, after helping them buy their first house, after babysitting my grandchildren 3 days a week for years without complaint, this was how they treated a simple offer to contribute to Christmas dinner. The living room fell silent as Carson's words hung in the air. Outside the large bay windows of their suburban home, delicate snowflakes had started falling, transforming their perfectly manicured lawn into a winter wonderland. It would have been beautiful if not for the tension that now suffocated the room. I'd arrived at their house just 20 minutes earlier, excited to discuss our family Christmas plans. For the past 15 years, holiday gatherings had rotated between our children's homes, with everyone contributing dishes and small financial amounts to help the host. This year was Carson and Lucy's turn, and I had come with a simple gesture. An offer to increase my usual contribution to $500 to help make the celebration extra special for everyone, especially my 3 grandchildren. I just thought, I started. Again, my voice wavering slightly. Since it's been such a difficult year for everyone, we could make Christmas a bit more special. Maybe get some nicer wines or that premium ham you all enjoyed last year? Carson's face darkened further. At 42, my oldest son had his father's strong jaw and my hazel eyes, but the coldness in his expression was something I'd never seen in the mirror. He exchanged a loaded glance with Lucy, who stood by the granite kitchen island, arms crossed defensively over her cashmere sweater. "Mom," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "we've already ordered everything. Lucy's been planning this dinner for weeks. You can't just waltz in and try to take over with your money." "Take over?" I repeated, genuinely confused. "I'm just trying to help." Lucy stepped forward, her diamond earrings catching the light from their elaborate chandelier, the one I'd helped them pick out when they renovated last spring. "Edith, we appreciate the thought, but we don't need your financial input. We're perfectly capable of hosting Christmas our way." The emphasis on "our" wasn't subtle. Aaron, my husband of 46 years, shifted uncomfortably on the expensive leather sofa, another item we had contributed to when they were furnishing this house 5 years ago. His weathered hands gripped his knees, knuckles whitening. I could read the plea in his eyes. "Let it go, Edith. Don't make a scene." But something about this moment felt different from all the others I had quietly endured. Perhaps it was the holiday season making me sentimental. Or perhaps it was the realization that I was turning 70 next month and had spent too many years walking on eggshells around my own children. "I'm not trying to take over anything," I said carefully. "I just want to contribute, like we always have." Carson let out an exaggerated sigh. "The thing is, Mom, we're doing things differently this year. We're having a smaller gathering, more intimate." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What do you mean, smaller?" Lucy jumped in, her voice artificially bright. "We thought it would be nice to have a more relaxed holiday this year. Just us, the kids, and Lucy's parents. They're flying in from Colorado on the 23rd. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "You're not including us in Christmas? Your own parents?" Carson at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "It's not that we don't want you there, Mom. It's just that with Marie-Belle's recital on Christmas Eve, and the kids' new presents, and Lucy's parents staying in the guest room, we thought, Lucy continued smoothly, that you and Aaron might prefer a quiet Christmas at home this year. No fuss, no rushing around. At your age, the holidays can be so exhausting. At your age. The words stung like a physical slap. I was active, healthy, and often had more energy than my son seemed to have after his days at the office. Just last month, I'd helped them repaint the kids' bedrooms while they were at work. I looked around the spacious living room, taking in the expensive furniture, the 75-inch television, the designer accessories, so many of which we had helped them acquire over the years. My eyes landed on a framed photo on the mantel. Carson, as a young boy, sitting on Aaron's shoulders at the beach, both of them laughing. Beside it was a newer photo of Carson and Lucy in front of their vacation home in Aspen, the down payment for which had come from our retirement savings. I see, I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. And when were you planning to tell us that we're not welcome for Christmas? Or were we supposed to just figure it out when no invitation arrived? Carson's expression hardened. Don't be dramatic, Mom. We're not saying you're not welcome. We're just saying that you'd prefer we weren't there, I finished for him. That your in-laws are more important than your own parents. Edith, Lucy's voice was sharp. That's completely unfair. My parents live across the country. They rarely get to see the kids. And we live 15 minutes away, I replied. We see the children 3 times a week when we babysit so you two can have your date nights and weekend brunches with friends. Aaron finally spoke up, his voice soft but firm. Carson, is this really what you want? To exclude us from Christmas? After everything? My son had the grace to look momentarily ashamed before his expression hardened again. Dad, it's not about excluding anyone. It's about making choices for our family, our immediate family, our immediate family. The words hung in the air like poison. After decades of sacrifice, of putting their needs before our own, of emptying our savings to help them achieve their dreams, we were now considered outside their immediate family. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse and the small gift bag I'd brought containing homemade cookies for the grandchildren. Well, I said, surprised by the calm in my voice, I think we've taken up enough of your valuable planning time. Let's go, Aaron. As we headed toward the door, I heard small footsteps racing down the stairs. My youngest grandchild, 5-year-old, Milo, burst into the room. Grandma! Grandpa! He shouted, running toward us with arms outstretched. Are you staying for dinner? I want to show you my new robot. I bent down to hug him, breathing in the sweet scent of his hair. Not today, sweetheart. Grandma and Grandpa have to go home now. But you just got here, he protested, his bottom lip quivering. Carson quickly moved to usher his son back toward the stairs. Milo, go back upstairs. Grandma and Grandpa are busy today. As we stepped out into the gently falling snow, I heard Milo's confused voice. But Dad, you said Grandma and Grandpa weren't coming for Christmas because they're too old for fun now. The door closed behind us before I could hear Carson's response. Aaron and I walked to our car in silence, the snow crunching beneath our feet. It wasn't until we were both inside with the engine running that I allowed the first tear to fall. Aaron reached over and squeezed my hand. Edith, he said softly, maybe they're right. Maybe we should have a quiet Christmas this year, just the two of us. I wiped my eyes and looked at my husband of nearly half a century. No, I said, a new resolve hardening within me. I don't think that's what we should do at all. The drive home passed in a blur of white landscapes and holiday decorations that now seemed to mock us with their cheerful messages of family togetherness. Aaron drove carefully through the snowfall, one hand still resting on mine, his thumb gently stroking my palm, a habit from decades of marriage, his silent way of saying, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'm here, we're together, it will be all right, but would it? As our modest two-story home came into view, I was struck by how different it looked from Carson and Lucy's sprawling residence. Our home was well-maintained but simple, with practical furniture that had seen years of use, family gatherings, and grandchildren's visits. We'd never felt the need for status symbols or luxury upgrades, not when those funds could help our children get ahead in life. Aaron pulled into the garage and cut the engine. Neither of us moved to get out. "Did you know?" I asked quietly. "About Christmas?" He sighed, his breath fogging the cooling car. "I had a feeling something was different. Carson's been dodging my calls about holiday plans for weeks. And you didn't say anything to me?" "I didn't want to upset you without being sure." He turned to face me, his eyes tired behind his glasses. "Edith, maybe this is for the best. Lucy's parents rarely see the children, and we see them all the time. Is that really what you believe?" I searched his face. "Or are you just trying to make excuses for them again?" Aaron had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over when Carson or our daughter Brittany behaved poorly. It was a role he'd perfected over the years, often at the expense of his own feelings. "I'm just trying to see it from their perspective," he said quietly. I got out of the car, suddenly needing air that wasn't filled with resigned acceptance. Inside the house, I went through the motions of hanging up my coat and scarf, my mind replaying not just today's conversation, but dozens of others over the past few years. How had I not seen the pattern forming? The way Carson and Lucy would accept our help with childcare, with home renovations, with financial support, while simultaneously making us feel as though our presence was barely tolerated. The subtle comments about things being outdated or old-fashioned whenever we offered opinions, the way Lucy would rearrange the dishes I brought to family dinners, placing them in less prominent positions on the table. In the kitchen, I filled the kettle for tea, my movements automatic. Through the window above the sink, I could see the garden Aaron had meticulously maintained, now dormant under its first winter blanket. Last spring, Carson had asked Aaron to help landscape their new backyard, promising it would be a father-son project. In reality, Aaron had done most of the work while Carson spent the time on his phone, occasionally directing changes when Aaron's designs didn't match the aesthetic he and Lucy wanted. Aaron came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything," I admitted. "The vacation home we helped them buy, the private schools we contribute to for the grandchildren, the 3 days a week we babysit so they can maintain their social life." The kettle whistled, and I poured the steaming water over tea bags. "Last month," I continued, carrying our mugs to the kitchen table, "Lucy asked me to help repaint the children's rooms while they were at that spa weekend. Do you remember?" Aaron nodded, settling into his chair. "You were exhausted afterward. Your back was hurting for days." When they got home, the first thing Lucy said wasn't, "Thank you." It was that the shade of blue I used was a bit dated, and she might have it redone. Aaron stirred honey into his tea. "She's particular about her home. You know that." "Yes, but Aaron—" I set my mug down harder than intended, tea sloshing over the rim. "Don't you see? It's not just about being particular. It's about making sure I know that my contributions, my opinions, my very presence isn't quite good enough." A memory surfaced, sharp and painful. Last Christmas at Brittany's house, I'd overheard Lucy telling my daughter, "It's sweet how your mom tries to stay relevant, but some of her ideas are so, well, you know, from another time." They'd both laughed, not realizing I was just around the corner. I'd said nothing then, just as I'd said nothing when they forgot to invite us to Milo's preschool graduation, or when they planned a family beach weekend but told us the rental house didn't have enough space for us, despite posting photos online of empty guest rooms. Maybe, I said slowly. We've been too generous, too available, too willing to overlook how they treat us because we love them. Aaron looked up, surprise crossing his features. In our 46 years of marriage, I had always been the one to smooth things over, to make excuses for our children's behavior, to insist that family comes. First, no matter what. What are you saying, Edith? I traced the wood grain of our kitchen table, the same table where we'd helped Carson with his homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, where we'd made decisions that shaped our lives together. I'm saying that I'm tired, I admitted, the truth of it settling heavily in my chest. Tired of feeling like we're good enough to provide money and childcare, but not good enough to be included in Christmas. Tired of pretending it doesn't hurt when they dismiss us as old and irrelevant. Aaron reached across the table and took my hand. I know. Do you remember when we were younger? I continued. How we always talked about what we'd do when we retired. The places we'd see, the experiences we'd have. He nodded, a wistful smile crossing his face. You wanted to see Hawaii, the black sand beaches. And you wanted to try snorkeling in clear blue water, I added. We never did any of it, Aaron said quietly. We put everything into helping the kids get established. And now they're established enough to exclude us from Christmas. We sat in silence for a long moment, the reality of our situation settling around us like the snow outside. Quiet, cold, and impossible to ignore. Edith, Aaron said finally, what would you like to do about Christmas? I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. A realignment of priorities, a reclamation of worth. I don't want to sit here alone, pretending it doesn't matter that our son doesn't want us in his home for the holidays, I said firmly. I don't want to accept scraps of their attention while they make us feel like burdens. What do you want? Then? I met his gaze, seeing not just my husband of nearly 5 decades, but the young man who had once promised me adventure, partnership, and respect. I want to go to Hawaii, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. I want to spend Christmas on those black sand beaches we always talked about. I want to use our money, the money we've worked hard for all our lives, on ourselves for once. Aaron's eyes widened, but I saw something else there too, a spark of excitement, of possibility. Hawaii, he repeated, testing the word. For Christmas. Yes, I said, growing more certain with each passing second. Let's give ourselves the gift they won't give us, respect for our worth, our choices, our lives. A slow smile spread across Aaron's face, the first real smile I'd seen since we'd arrived at Carson and Lucy's that afternoon. Well, he said, reaching for his laptop on the counter. I suppose we should look at flights. I woke the next morning, with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Aaron and I had stayed up late, researching flights and accommodations in Hawaii. We'd found a beautiful oceanfront condo on the Big Island with views of both the ocean and Mauna Kea. The black sand beaches I had dreamed of for decades were just a short drive away. The property had a pool, hot tub, and was within walking distance to restaurants and shops. It was perfect and available for the holidays. We'd booked it immediately, along with first-class flights leaving in 2 weeks, just 3 days before Christmas. After 46 years of putting everyone else first, we were finally doing something, just for us. I hummed as I prepared breakfast, the scent of coffee and pancakes filling our cozy kitchen. Aaron came downstairs, his hair still damp from the shower, and wrapped his arms around me from behind. Still set on Hawaii? He asked, his voice warm against my ear. More than ever, I replied, turning to kiss him. Are you? Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a swimsuit on those black sand beaches. I laughed, swatting him playfully with the spatula. Careful, Mr. Reynolds. I might have to buy something scandalous just to shock you. The phone rang, interrupting our moment. Aaron checked the caller ID and his smile faded. It's Brittany. I took a deep breath. We hadn't told either of our children about our Christmas plans yet. Put it on speaker. Aaron pressed the button and set the phone on the counter between us. Good morning, sweetheart. Dad. Mom. I just got off the phone with Carson. Brittany's voice was sharp with accusation. What happened yesterday? He said you stormed out when they tried to explain their Christmas plans. I flipped a pancake, keeping my voice steady. That's not exactly how it happened, Brittany. Well, Lucy is really upset. She says you made her feel terrible about wanting her parents to have a special Christmas with the kids. Aaron and I exchanged glances. Of course they had already started. Spinning the narrative. What Carson and Lucy told us, Aaron explained patiently, is that we're not invited to Christmas this year because they want a smaller gathering with just Lucy's parents. There was a brief silence on the other end. Oh, Brittany finally said. Well, I'm sure they didn't mean it like that. How else could they have meant it? I asked, sliding pancakes onto plates. Mom, you know how Lucy is about her perfect holiday aesthetic, and her parents do live across the country. You and Dad see the kids all the time. I set the spatula down harder than necessary. So that justifies excluding us from Christmas? After everything we've done for them? Don't be dramatic, Brittany replied, echoing her brother's words from yesterday. It's just one holiday. Besides, you could always come to my house. The kids would love to see you. Aaron raised an eyebrow at me. This was the first we'd heard of an invitation to Brittany's. That's very kind of you to offer now, I said carefully. But we've made other plans. What plans? Brittany's surprise was evident. You always spend Christmas with family. Yes, we do, Aaron agreed, when we're invited. Dad, seriously, you're both overreacting. What plans could you possibly have made overnight? I took a sip of coffee, steeling myself. We're going to Hawaii for Christmas? The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the clock ticking in the living room. Hawaii? Brittany finally sputtered. You can't be serious. We are entirely serious, I replied. We've booked our flights and accommodations. We leave on the 22nd and we'll be back after New Year's. But what about the family? What about the grandchildren? You can't just abandon everyone for Christmas. Aaron leaned closer to the phone. Brittany, we've spent every Christmas for the past 40 years putting everyone else's needs first. This year, we're putting ourselves first. This is ridiculous. Brittany's voice had risen to a near shout. You're being selfish. The kids will be devastated. The same kids whose parents told them we're too old for fun? I asked quietly. Another silence. Carson shouldn't have said that, Brittany finally admitted. But you know he didn't mean it. And the kids adore you both. We adore them too, I said. But we've made our decision. We're going to Hawaii. Wait, how are you even affording this? Aren't you always telling us you need to be careful with your retirement savings? The question hit a nerve. For years, we'd been frugal with our own needs and wants, always setting aside money to help our children, with house down payments, private school tuition, expensive summer camps, even Carson's luxury SUV. All while telling ourselves we couldn't afford the trips and experiences we'd dreamed of. We can afford it just fine, Aaron said, an edge to his voice. We're using the money we've set aside for ourselves. But, Brittany paused, and I could almost hear the calculations happening in her head. But what about the kids' summer camp? Deposits? You said you'd help with those again this year. And there it was. Not concern for our happiness, not understanding of our perspective, just worry about the financial impact on her. I said slowly, that it's time for both. You and Carson to start planning your financial futures without automatically assuming our savings are at your disposal. I can't believe this. Brittany's voice had gone cold. One little misunderstanding with Carson and you're punishing all of us, cutting us off, running away to Hawaii instead of acting like responsible grandparents. We've been responsible grandparents and parents for decades, Erin replied. We've given you both everything we could, often at the expense of our own dreams. This isn't punishment, Brittany. This is us finally living our own lives. Well, I hope you're happy with yourselves, she snapped. Enjoy your selfish little vacation while the rest of us try to explain to the children why Grandma and Grandpa don't love them enough to be here for Christmas. The call ended abruptly. Erin and I sat in silence for a moment, our breakfast cooling on the plates before us. That went well, Erin finally said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I reached across the table and took his hand. Are we doing the right thing? He squeezed my fingers gently. Yes, he said with quiet conviction. We are. What if she's right? What if the grandchildren think we don't love them? Edith, Erin's voice was firm but gentle. We've shown those children nothing but love from the day they were born. One Christmas away won't change that. And maybe, just maybe, our children need to learn that love doesn't mean we stop existing as people with our own needs and dreams. I nodded slowly, the knot in my chest loosening slightly. Hawaii? I said, as if tasting the word. Hawaii, Erin confirmed. Black sand beaches, blue water, and not a single person making us feel like we're too old to matter. As we finished our breakfast, my phone buzzed with text messages. First from Carson, then from Lucy, then from Brittany again. I set the phone aside without reading them. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I was putting myself first. And despite the guilt tugging at the edges of my resolve, it felt surprisingly, wonderfully right. The next few days passed in a flurry of preparations for our trip. I found myself moving through our home with newfound purpose, sorting through summer clothes long packed away, making lists of essentials we'd need for Hawaii. Erin spent hours researching activities, snorkeling tours, volcano excursions, sunset cruises, with the enthusiasm of a much younger man. Meanwhile, our phones continued to buzz with messages and calls from Carson and Brittany. After that first morning, we'd agreed to let most of them go to voicemail. The few we did answer followed a predictable pattern. Initial guilt-tripping, followed by disbelief about our trip, ending with thinly veiled references to money. I still can't believe you're doing this, Brittany had said during one call. And booking first-class tickets. Do you know what else that money could be used for? What went unspoken but clearly implied was, that money could be used for us. By the third day, I needed space from the constant barrage. After breakfast, I told Erin I was going for a drive. Want company? He asked, looking up from his Hawaiian guidebook. I shook my head. I think I need some time alone to clear my head. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Drive safely. The roads might still be icy. Outside, the December air was crisp and cold, the sky a brilliant blue after days of snowfall. I backed out of our driveway, with no particular destination in mind. I just drove, taking familiar streets through our small town, past the elementary school where both Carson and Brittany had attended, past the park where I'd pushed them on swings and watched them climb jungle gyms. So many memories, so many years of putting their needs, their happiness, their futures first. Eventually, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of Lakeside Gardens, a small botanical garden and tea room at the edge of town. Erin and I had our first date here, 48 years ago. He'd been so nervous he'd spilled tea on his new shirt. I'd found it endearing. The gardens were mostly dormant now, winter having stripped the trees and shrubs of their glory, but the tea room was open year-round. I went inside, grateful for the warmth and the scent of spiced tea and freshly baked scones. Just one today? Asked the hostess, a woman perhaps 10 years younger than myself. Yes, just me. She led me to a small table by the window, overlooking what would be rose gardens in summer. A waitress quickly brought a pot of tea and took my order for a cranberry scone. Then I was alone with my thoughts again. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the unread messages. More of the same from Carson and Brittany, but there was also one from Marie Bell, my 14-year-old granddaughter. Grandma, Dad says you're going to Hawaii instead of coming for Christmas. Is that true? Don't you want to see us? My heart clenched. Marie Bell had always been sensitive, thoughtful. Unlike her parents, her question seemed genuinely confused rather than accusatory. I typed a response. Yes, sweetheart. Grandpa and I are going to Hawaii. We've always wanted to see it. But it's not because we don't want to see you, your dad. And Mom decided to have a smaller Christmas this year with just you kids and your other grandparents. We love you very much and will bring you something special from Hawaii. I pressed send, then set the phone down as the waitress brought my scone. The first bite was buttery and sweet, the cranberries adding a tart contrast. I savored it slowly, watching an elderly couple enter the tea room arm in arm. They were both bundled in winter coats, their white hair visible beneath knitted caps. The man held the door for his wife, his hand resting gently at the small of her back as she passed through. There was something in that simple gesture, care, respect, partnership, that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Aaron still touched me that way, still looked at me with the same tenderness after nearly half a century together. Yet somewhere along the way, we'd allowed our children to make us feel as though our lives, our relationship, our dreams were secondary to theirs. My phone buzzed with Marie Bell's reply. But Grandma, we always have Christmas together. Dad says you're being selfish. Selfish. There was that word again, wielded like a weapon to keep us in line. I thought carefully before responding. Honey, Grandpa and I have spent 40+ years putting family first. We've never taken a trip like this because we were always focused on you all. This year we're doing something for ourselves. That's not selfish, it's self-care. Someday you'll understand the difference. I set the phone down again, but it immediately buzzed with another message. This one was from Carson, not Marie Bell. Mom, why are you dragging Marie Bell into this? She's upset now. This is exactly the kind of manipulation we don't need right now. If you and Dad want to waste your savings on a luxury vacation instead of thinking about the family's future, that's your choice. But don't try to turn the kids against us. I stared at the message dumbfounded. I hadn't initiated contact with Marie Bell. She had texted me first. And nothing in my responses had been manipulative or aimed at turning her against her parents. I had simply told her the truth, in the gentlest way possible. For a moment, I considered calling Carson to defend myself. Then I realized that's exactly what he wanted. To pull me into another argument where I would eventually apologize just to keep the peace, where I would end up questioning my own perceptions and decisions. Not this time. I put the phone away without responding and finished my tea in silence, watching the elderly couple across the room. They were sharing a plate of tiny sandwiches, talking quietly, occasionally laughing together. They looked content, at peace. That's what Aaron and I deserve too. Not constant drama and demands, not guilt trips and emotional manipulation, but simple contentment in each other's company. By the time I paid my bill and left the tea room, I felt calmer, more centered. The initial hurt of being excluded from Christmas had evolved into something else, a determination to reclaim my life, my marriage, my sense of self-worth. On the drive home, I stopped at a shopping center I rarely visited. Inside, I bypassed the practical, conservative clothing stores I usually frequented and walked into a boutique that catered to women traveling to warm destinations. "Can I help? You find something?" asked a sales associate. "Yes," I said with newfound confidence. "I need a complete wardrobe for Hawaii. Something colorful. Something—" I searched for the right word. Joyful. 2 hours later, I returned home with bags containing bright sundresses, flowing pants in tropical prints, comfortable sandals, and yes, a new swimsuit that was far more flattering and stylish than the practical one piece I'd worn for the past decade. Aaron was in the living room, still surrounded by guidebooks and printouts of Hawaiian attractions. He looked up in surprise at my many shopping bags. "Edith Reynolds," he said with a low whistle. "Did you buy out the entire mall?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "Not quite, but I did buy a new wardrobe for our trip." I pulled out a flowing turquoise dress with a subtle floral pattern. "What do you think?" Aaron's eyes softened. "I think you'll be the most beautiful woman on the island." "Flatterer," I said, but I was pleased. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting aside his guidebook. "After your drive?" I sat beside him on the couch, considering the question. "I feel free," I said finally. "Like I've been carrying this weight of obligation and guilt for so long that I stopped noticing how heavy it was. And now, suddenly, I'm setting it down." Aaron wrapped an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. "I know exactly what you mean." My phone buzzed again in my purse. We both glanced toward the sound but made no move to check it. "They'll be fine," Aaron said quietly. "They're adults with successful careers and beautiful homes. They don't actually need us. They just want access to our savings and our time on their terms." "I know," I replied, leaning my head against his shoulder. "And maybe, by the time we get back from Hawaii, they'll have figured that out too." 1 week before our departure to Hawaii, Aaron and I were enjoying a quiet breakfast when the doorbell rang. It was barely 8:30 in the morning, too early for casual visitors. "I'll get it," Aaron said, setting down his coffee cup. I listened from the kitchen as he opened the front door, heard the surprise in his voice. "Brittany, this is unexpected." "Is Mom here?" Our daughter's voice carried clearly through the house. "I need to talk to both of you." Aaron ushered her into the kitchen, where she stood awkwardly, still wearing her winter coat, a designer handbag clutched in her gloved hands. At 38, Brittany strongly resembled me at that age. The same auburn hair, though hers was professionally highlighted, the same heart-shaped face. But the tight set of her mouth was all her father's, a sure sign she was upset. "Good morning." "Sweetheart," I said, rising to kiss her cheek. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you." Her voice was clipped. "I can't stay long. I have a meeting at 10. Aaron and I exchanged glances as we sat back down at the table. Brittany remained standing, as if to emphasize the brevity of her visit. "What brings you by so early?" Aaron asked. Brittany took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about your vacation plans." She said vacation as if it were a questionable life choice. "And about the summer camp situation." Ah, there it was. Not concern for our feelings about being excluded from Christmas, but concern about the money we typically provided. What about it? I kept my voice neutral. "Well," Brittany began, setting her expensive bag on the counter. "Anna Lou and Samson have been going to Camp Pinewood for 3 summers now. They're counting on returning this year. They've already told all their friends they'll be there." I nodded. Camp Pinewood was an exclusive 8-week summer program that cost nearly $8,000 per child. For the past 3 years, we had covered half the cost for each grandchild. "I've already submitted their applications," Brittany continued, "with the understanding that you'd be contributing as usual. The deposits are due next week." "I see," I said carefully. "And what does this have to do with our trip to Hawaii?" Brittany's expression tightened further. "Mom, be reasonable. You know how much you're spending on this impulsive vacation. First class, flights, oceanfront accommodations over the holidays. That's easily what you'd normally contribute to the children's camp. So you think we should cancel our trip to pay for summer camp?" Aaron's voice had an edge to it I rarely heard. "I think," Brittany said slowly, as if explaining something to a child, "that you're making a rash decision based on one misunderstanding with Carson. And that decision is affecting more than just Christmas. It's affecting your grandchildren's summer plans." I took a sip of my now cooling coffee, using the moment to gather my thoughts. This wasn't really about Camp Pinewood, just as Carson's outburst hadn't really been about my offer to contribute to Christmas dinner. This was about our children's expectations that our time, energy, and money existed primarily to serve their needs. Brittany, I said finally, we're not canceling our trip, and we're not automatically covering camp costs this year. Her face flushed. So you are punishing the children for Carson's mistake. No one is being punished, Erin interjected. We're simply making different choices this year, choices that prioritize our own happiness for once. This is so selfish, Brittany said, echoing the accusation she'd made over the phone. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for us, I repeated, genuinely confused. What exactly have you done for us, Brittany? She blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. Well, we include you in all our family events. We bring the children to visit every other weekend. Last month, Samson helped Dad rake leaves. You mean when you dropped Samson off for us to babysit? While you went shopping and he helped for 10 minutes before going inside to play video games? Erin clarified. Brittany's flush deepened. That's not fair. The kids love spending time with you. And we love them, I assured her. But that's not the same as you doing things for us. When was the last time you helped us with anything? When was the last time you considered our feelings before making family plans? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, clearly searching for examples and coming up short. The truth is, Erin continued gently, we've spent decades centering our lives around your needs and Carson's. We've given you down payments for houses, contributed to private schools and camps, provided free childcare whenever you've asked. And we've done it all gladly, because we love you. But somewhere along the way, I added, you both started acting as if that's simply what we owe. You. As if our purpose is to support your lifestyle and be available whenever it's convenient for you. That's not true, Brittany protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I reached for the calendar hanging on our refrigerator. Let's look at just last month. You called on the 3rd asking us to take Anna Lou to her dance recital because you had a work event. On the 7th, you asked us to babysit last minute so you and Thomas could attend a dinner party. On the 12th, you dropped off both kids for the entire weekend because you and Thomas wanted a getaway. That's what grandparents do, Brittany insisted. They help out with the grandchildren. Yes, they do, Erin agreed, but not at the expense of their own lives and happiness. Not when that help is expected rather than appreciated. Brittany's expression hardened. So, this is it? You're just checking out? Abandoning your responsibilities to fly off to Hawaii? I felt a flash of anger, quickly followed by sadness. How had we raised children who viewed our desire for joy and fulfillment as abandonment? Who saw us not as individuals with our own dreams and needs, but as resources to be utilized? We're not checking out, I said firmly. We're reclaiming our right to make choices for ourselves. We've earned that right, Brittany. And what about Camp Pinewood? She asked. What am I supposed to tell the kids? You could tell them the truth, Erin suggested. That Grandma and Grandpa have decided to take a special trip this year, and that means the family budget needs adjusting. Or, I added, you could simply pay the full amount yourselves. You and Thomas both have successful careers. The money? Carson's new house renovation? The kitchen alone cost more than our entire Hawaii trip. Brittany's jaw tightened. That's different. Their house is an investment. And our trip is an investment too, I replied. In our marriage, in our happiness, in our life together. She shook her head, clearly unconvinced. I need to go. I'll be late for my meeting. She grabbed her handbag from the counter and moved toward the door, then turned back. I hope you realize what you're throwing away. All those years of family, tradition, the children's respect. The children will respect us regardless, Erin interrupted, unless you and Carson teach them not to. Brittany's eyes widened at the implication, then narrowed. Without another word, she turned and walked out. Moments later, we heard her car start and pull away from the curb. Aaron sighed deeply. That went about as well as expected. I reached across the table and took his hand. It's not easy for them to adjust their expectations. We've enabled this dynamic for years. You're right, he admitted. But it's still disappointing. We sat in silence for a few minutes, finishing our now cold coffee. Then Aaron squeezed my hand and smiled. 1 week until Hawaii. No guilt trips allowed there, except maybe to see a volcano. Despite everything, I laughed. This was the man I'd married, kind, supportive, able to find humor even in difficult moments. And for the first time in too long, we were putting our relationship first. No guilt trips, I agreed. Just black sand beaches and blue water. As we cleared the breakfast dishes together, I realized that beneath my sadness about Brittany's visit, I felt something else growing stronger, certainty that we were making the right choice, not just for now but for the future of our family. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is establish that love doesn't mean sacrificing your own joy indefinitely. 3 days before our departure to Hawaii, I was in our bedroom packing when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marie Belle's name. Unlike the calls from Carson and Brittany, which I'd been letting go to voicemail, I answered immediately. Grandma? My granddaughter's voice sounded small, uncertain. Yes, sweetheart. How are you? I'm okay. There was a pause then. Are you really going to Hawaii for Christmas? Yes, we are. Our flight leaves in 3 days. Another pause. Dad says you're doing it to punish him and Mom, and Aunt Brittany says you're being selfish. I sat on the edge of the bed, choosing my words carefully. Marie Belle, your grandfather and I aren't trying to punish anyone. We're just doing something special for ourselves this year. But why can't you do something special and still come for Christmas? Even for part of the day? I hesitated. Should I tell her that we hadn't been invited? That her parents had specifically excluded us in favor of her other grandparents? That didn't seem fair to put on a 14-year-old. It's complicated, honey. Sometimes adults need to make choices that are hard to explain. Is it because of what happened at Thanksgiving? She asked suddenly. I frowned, confused. What do you mean? What happened at Thanksgiving? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, as if Marie Belle had said something she shouldn't have. Never mind. I shouldn't have brought it up. Marie Belle, I said gently but firmly, what happened at Thanksgiving? Your grandfather and I spent Thanksgiving at Aunt Brittany's house with all of you. I know, but... She lowered her voice to almost a whisper. After you left, Mom and Dad and Aunt Brittany were talking in the kitchen. I came down for water and heard them. My stomach tightened. What did you hear, sweetheart? They were talking about Christmas. Dad said it would be so much easier without having to, manage your expectations this year. He said Grandma Anna and Grandpa Jay were way more fun and didn't make everything complicated with old-fashioned ideas. And Aunt Brittany said... She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. It's okay, I assured her. You can tell me. She said that they'd been planning this for months, to have Christmas without you and Grandpa this year, that they just needed to figure out how to tell you without making you upset enough to turn off the money faucet. Those were her exact words. I remember because it sounded so mean. I felt as if the air had been knocked out of me. They'd been planning to exclude us for months? The conversation with Carson and Lucy hadn't been a spontaneous decision. It had been premeditated, with Brittany's knowledge and approval. Grandma? Are you still there? I swallowed hard. Yes, I'm here. Thank you for telling me the truth. I'm sorry if I made you sad, Marie Belle said, her voice small again. I just wanted to understand why you weren't coming. You haven't made me sad, I assured her, though that wasn't entirely true. Sometimes the truth is hard to hear, but it's always better than not knowing. I wish you were coming for Christmas, she said. Milo keeps asking if you'll be there to make your special cinnamon rolls. My heart clenched at the mention of my youngest grandchild. Maybe we can make them together after the holidays. Would you like that? Yes. Her voice brightened momentarily, then dimmed again. But Dad says you and Grandpa might not have money for extra things anymore after your trip. I closed my eyes, digesting this new manipulation. So Carson was already setting up a narrative where our Hawaii trip had somehow financially ruined us. That's not true, Marie Belle. Our trip isn't affecting our financial situation at all. Your dad is— I paused, not wanting to speak badly of Carson to his daughter, but unwilling to let the lie stand. Your dad is mistaken about that. Oh. She sounded relieved. That's good. I was worried. There was a commotion in the background. Then Marie Belle's voice became rushed. I have to go. Mom's calling me for dinner. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. Very much. After we hung up, I sat motionless on the bed, surrounded by half-packed suitcases. The revelation of what had been said after Thanksgiving hit me like a physical blow. Not just the exclusion from Christmas, but the calculated way they discussed it, the contempt in their words, the reference to us as a money faucet. Aaron found me there 10 minutes later, still staring into space. Edith, are you all right? I looked up at him, my husband of nearly half a century, the man who had stood beside me through every joy and hardship, the man who was being mocked and dismissed by our own children behind his back. Marie Belle just called, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She overheard something at Thanksgiving. I relayed the conversation, watching Aaron's expression shift from concern to hurt to a resigned sort of anger. So they've been planning this all along, he said when I finished. The confrontation at their house, the smaller gathering excuse. It was all just a way to get what they wanted without jeopardizing the financial support. Exactly. And now they're telling the grandchildren that our trip will leave us broke, probably to prepare them for when they cut back on the money they've come to expect from us. Aaron sat beside me on the bed, taking my hand in his. Are you having second thoughts? About Hawaii? No, I said firmly. If anything, this makes me more certain we're doing the right thing. We need to break this cycle, Aaron. Not just for us, but for them too. They've become— I searched for the right word. Entitled, Aaron supplied. They've become entitled to our time, our money, our sacrifices. And that's partly our fault for always putting their wants before our needs. I nodded, squeezing his hand. There's something else we need to discuss. What's that? Our wills. I met his eyes directly. We've always planned to leave everything to Carson and Brittany, with trusts for the grandchildren's education. I think we need to reconsider. Aaron's eyebrows rose. That's a significant change, Edith. I know. But hearing how they talk about us when we're not there, learning that they view us primarily as a source of funding rather than as parents who deserve respect and consideration, it changes things. He was quiet for a moment, considering, what are you thinking instead? I'm thinking we need to protect ourselves first. Ensure that we have more than enough for our retirement, including travel, potential medical expenses, and whatever else we might need or want. After that, yes, set up educational trust for the grandchildren that can't be accessed by Carson or Brittany, and maybe consider charitable donations for the rest. Aaron nodded slowly. That makes sense. We should talk to our lawyer after we get back from Hawaii. Agreed. I stood up, suddenly energized. And there's one more call I need to make. To whom? Our financial advisor. I reached for my phone. I want to move some money around before we leave, just as a precaution. For years, Carson had had access to one of our savings accounts, ostensibly for emergencies, but increasingly used for home renovations, luxury purchases, and other non-essential expenses. Brittany had similar access to another account. It was time to close those accounts and consolidate our funds where only Aaron and I could access them. As I made the call and went through the necessary steps with our advisor, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Yes, there was sadness in accepting the true nature of our relationship with our adult children. Yes, there was disappointment in recognizing how they really saw us. But there was also liberation in finally acknowledging these truths and acting accordingly. When I hung up, Aaron was watching me with a mixture of pride and love. "Feel better?" he asked. "Much." I returned to my packing with renewed purpose. Now, should I bring the blue sundress or the yellow one for our Christmas dinner? In Hawaii? Aaron came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Bring both," he murmured against my hair. "You'll look beautiful in either one." I turned in his embrace to face him. "Thank you," I said softly. "For what?" "For being my partner in all of this. For supporting this trip. For understanding." He smiled, that same warm smile that had first captured my heart decades ago. "Always, Edith. Always." As we finished packing together, discussing snorkeling gear and sunscreen, I realized that whatever happened with Carson and Brittany, whether they eventually came to understand our perspective or not, Aaron and I would be okay. More than okay. We would be living authentically, prioritizing our relationship, and finally enjoying the fruits of our lifetime of hard work. And that, I decided, was the greatest gift we could give ourselves this Christmas. The night before our departure to Hawaii, Aaron and I sat on our back porch despite the December chill. We'd wrapped ourselves in thick blankets, steaming mugs of hot chocolate warming our hands as we gazed at the stars visible through gaps in the clouds. The neighborhood was quiet, most houses already decorated for Christmas with twinkling lights and festive displays. Our own home remained undecorated this year. What was the point when we'd be spending the holiday on a black sand beach? Instead? "Penny for your thoughts," Aaron said, breaking our comfortable silence. I took a sip of hot chocolate, considering. "I'm thinking about tomorrow, about actually getting on that plane and flying away from all of this." I gestured vaguely toward the silent phone inside, which had continued to buzz with messages from Carson and Brittany throughout the day. "Having second thoughts?" Aaron's voice was gentle, free of judgment. "No," I said, surprising myself with the certainty I felt. "Not second thoughts. Just processing, I suppose. This is the first Christmas in 40 years that we won't be with the children. The first major holiday where we've chosen ourselves instead of them." Aaron nodded, sipping his own drink. "It's a big change, but sometimes change is necessary, even when it's difficult." I thought about Marie Belle's revelation, about the casual cruelty of our children discussing us as financial resources rather than parents with feelings and needs of their own. I thought about Carson's dismissal of us as too old for fun, about Brittany's silent complicity in excluding us from Christmas plans. Something crystallized within me. Not anger, though that had certainly flared initially, but a quiet, steady resolve. This wasn't just about one Christmas, one trip to Hawaii. This was about the remaining years of our lives and how we would live them. "Aaron," I said, setting down my mug on the small table between our chairs, "I want to make a promise to each other." He turned to look at me, his face half illuminated by the porch light, still handsome after all these years. "What kind of promise?" "I promise that from this moment forward, I will prioritize us, our relationship, our happiness, our dreams, before anyone else's demands or expectations, even our children's." I reached for his hand beneath the blanket. "This isn't about shutting them out. It's about establishing that at this stage of our lives, we deserve to come first in our own story." Aaron squeezed my hand, his eyes glistening, slightly in the dim light. "I promise the same," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We've given them roots and wings, as they say. We've done our job as parents. Now it's time to remember that we're not just parents. We're Edith and Aaron, two people who chose each other long before they came along. Exactly. I felt something tight in my chest finally release, a tension I hadn't fully recognized until this moment. We'll still love them, still be there for genuine needs. But no more sacrificing our joy, our time, our resources just to accommodate their whims. No more dropping everything because Lucy decided the playroom needs repainting on a weekend we had plans, Aaron added. No more canceling our dinner reservations because Brittany suddenly needs a babysitter for a party she's known about for weeks, I continued. And no more pretending it doesn't hurt when they dismiss our opinions or exclude us from family decisions. I nodded, suddenly understanding something I hadn't fully grasped before. You know, this isn't just for us. It's for them, too, in a way. Aaron raised an eyebrow. How do you figure? We've enabled their behavior for years, decades, really. Always giving in, always saying yes, always providing whatever they asked for without expecting basic consideration in return. That's not healthy for anyone. Not for us, and not for them either. You think they'll eventually see it that way? Aaron's tone suggested skepticism. I shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. But that's not really the point, is it? We're not doing this to teach them a lesson. We're doing it because it's what we need. Aaron was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. Whatever comes from this, whether they eventually understand and respect our position, or whether they simply adjust to a new normal where we're not at their constant disposal, we're doing this for ourselves, not for their reaction. Exactly. I picked up my mug again, taking a small sip of the cooling chocolate. So, Hawaii tomorrow. Hawaii tomorrow, Aaron confirmed, a smile spreading across his face. First-class seats, oceanfront condo, black sand beaches. And no, scheduling our activities around anyone else's convenience or preferences. No cooking Christmas dinner for 12 while everyone else watches football. No mediating siblings' holiday arguments. We both laughed, the sound carrying in the still night air. It felt good to laugh, to feel lightness instead of the weight of obligation that had been pressing on us for so long. As if on cue, my phone buzzed from inside the house. Another message, another demand, another attempt to pull us back into the old patterns. For the first time, I felt no compulsion to check it, no twinge of guilt at letting it go unanswered. Early flight tomorrow, Aaron said, finishing his hot chocolate. We should get some sleep. I nodded, but made no move to go inside just yet. Just a few more minutes under the stars. Aaron settled back in his chair, reaching for my hand again. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who had weathered decades together, now embarking on a new chapter neither of us had anticipated, but both of us embraced. In that quiet moment on our back porch, something fundamental shifted. I wasn't just going to Hawaii for Christmas. I was reclaiming my right to joy, to autonomy, to a life centered around my own choices rather than others' expectations. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a declaration of independence. When we finally went inside, I left my phone on the kitchen counter without checking the messages. Whatever Carson or Brittany wanted could wait until we returned. Or perhaps, if we were lucky, they would figure out how to solve their own problems without our intervention. Upstairs, I paused in front of the mirror as I prepared for bed. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, her eyes clearer, her posture straighter, a subtle confidence in the set of her shoulders that hadn't been there before. You know what? I said to Aaron as we settled into bed. I'm not just looking forward to Hawaii. I'm looking forward to the rest of our lives together. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Me too, Edith. Me too. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt more at peace than I had in years. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new horizons, literal and metaphorical. But more importantly, it would bring the first day of a life where Aaron and I finally, unapologetically, put ourselves first. It had taken us 7 decades to get here, but better late than never. Our departure day arrived with a brilliant winter sunrise, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of pink and gold. I woke before the alarm, excitement humming through me like an electrical current. Beside me, Aaron still slept peacefully, one arm flung above his head in the way that had been familiar to me for decades. I slipped quietly out of bed, wanting a few moments to myself before the rush of final preparations. In the kitchen, I started the coffee maker and glanced at my phone, which I'd left on the counter overnight. The screen showed 12 missed calls and 23 text messages, a digital bombardment from Carson and Brittany that had continued well into the night. With a steady hand, I switched the phone to airplane mode. Whatever crisis they'd manufactured could wait until we returned. Today was about Hawaii, about beginning our journey, about keeping the promise we'd made to each other under the stars. The coffee maker gurgled its completion just as Aaron appeared in the doorway, his silver hair tousled from sleep, but his eyes bright with anticipation. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds," he said, coming to kiss my cheek. "Ready for our adventure?" I handed him a steaming mug. More than ready. We moved through our morning routine, with practiced efficiency, double-checking our packing lists, securing the house, arranging for our neighbor to collect mail and check on things during our absence. Our flight wasn't until noon, but we'd decided to arrive at the airport early, unwilling to risk any last-minute complications. As Aaron loaded our luggage into the car, I took one final walk through our home. The house was oddly quiet without Christmas decorations, no tree in the corner of the living room, no stockings hung by the fireplace, no scent of holiday baking in the air. For a brief moment, melancholy threatened to overtake me. Then I remembered Marie Belle's revelation about what had been said after Thanksgiving. I remembered the calculating way our children had discussed excluding us, as if we were expenses to be managed rather than people to be cherished. The melancholy dissipated, replaced by that same quiet resolve I'd felt on the porch. "Edith?" Aaron called from the front door. "Everything okay?" I nodded, joining him at the entrance. "Everything's perfect." As we backed out of the driveway, I noticed movement at our neighbor's window, Mrs. Wilson watching our departure with undisguised curiosity. Word of our holiday plans had spread through the neighborhood, no doubt fueled by Carson and Brittany's complaints. I lifted my hand in a cheerful wave, refusing to show any sign of the guilt our children had tried so hard to instill. The drive to the airport was peaceful, Christmas music playing softly on the radio as Aaron navigated the light morning traffic. We discussed our itinerary for the first few days in Hawaii, a sunset dinner cruise on Christmas Eve, a morning at the Black Sand Beach on Christmas Day, perhaps a helicopter tour of the volcanic landscapes later in the week. "I've been thinking," Aaron said as we approached the airport exit. "When we get back, we should look into one of those river cruises in Europe, the ones that go through all those small towns along the Rhine." I glanced at him in surprise. "You hate boats. You've always said you'd get seasick." He chuckled. "Large ocean vessels, yes, but these are small river boats on calm water. And besides," he reached over to squeeze my hand, "if I get a little queasy, it's a small price to pay for seeing your face when you finally get to visit all those European villages you've talked about since we were young." My heart swelled. This was the man I'd married. Thoughtful, generous, putting my happiness alongside his own. How had I allowed our children to make me forget, even briefly, what a gift that was? "I'd love that," I said simply. The airport was busy with holiday travelers, but our first-class tickets granted us access to a separate check-in counter with no line. The attendant who processed our boarding passes was cheerful and efficient. "Hawaii. For Christmas," she commented, scanning our documentation. "What a wonderful idea! I've always wanted to do that." "It's our first time," Aaron told her. "We've been waiting nearly 50 years for this trip." She looked up in surprise. 50 years? That's quite a wait." "Life gets busy," I said with a small smile. "Children, careers, responsibilities. but we're finally doing it. Well, I hope it's everything you've dreamed of, she replied, handing back our boarding passes. You two are an inspiration. An inspiration. The word followed me as we made our way through security and toward our gate. Was that what we were now? Not just grandparents dutifully filling our prescribed roles, but two people charting our own course despite expectations to the contrary. I rather liked the thought. At the gate, we settled into comfortable seats in the first-class lounge. Aaron went to get us coffee while I arranged our carry-on items. When he returned, he had a small gift bag alongside the coffee cups. "What's this?" I asked as he handed it to me. "Just a little something for the journey," he said, his eyes twinkling. Inside the bag was a leather-bound journal with my name embossed in gold on the cover. The first page had been inscribed in Aaron's neat handwriting. "For Edith, my partner in all things. May this journal capture the adventures we should have taken years ago, and the ones we're finally brave enough to begin. With all my love, Aaron." "Oh, Aaron," I whispered, unexpected tears pricking at my eyes. "I thought you might want to document this trip," he said. "Maybe even turn it into something more. A blog or one of those travel journals you've always admired." Once again, I was struck by how well he knew me, how he remembered dreams I'd mentioned in passing years ago. How different from our children, who barely seemed to see us as people separate from our usefulness to them. "It's perfect," I said, leaning over to kiss him softly. "Thank you." As our boarding time approached, I felt my phone vibrate in my purse. I'd forgotten to turn it completely off after switching to airplane mode earlier. Pulling it out, I saw Brittany's name on the screen. For a brief moment, my finger hovered over the answer button. Old habits die hard. Then I remembered our promise to each other, our commitment to this new chapter. Whatever crisis Brittany was calling about, it wasn't more important than this moment, this beginning. I declined the call and switched the phone off completely. "Everything okay?" Aaron asked, noticing my expression. "Everything is wonderful," I assured him. "I was just making a choice." He nodded in understanding, no further explanation needed between us. When our flight was called for boarding, we gathered our things and joined the line. As we moved through the jet bridge, I felt a lightness in my step that had nothing to do with our luggage being checked. This wasn't just a trip to Hawaii, it was a declaration of independence, a reclaiming of our right to prioritize our own. "Joy, ready?" Aaron asked as we paused at the aircraft door. I squeezed his hand. "For Hawaii? Absolutely. For the rest of our lives lived on our own terms? Even more so." His smile, that same wonderful smile that had captivated me nearly 50 years ago, was all the answer I needed. We stepped onto the plane together, leaving behind the weight of others' expectations and stepping into a future of our own design. The moment our plane lifted off the runway, I felt a rush of emotion so intense it nearly took my breath away. Through the small window, I watched our hometown grow smaller beneath us, snow-covered rooftops and winding streets diminishing until they disappeared beneath a blanket of clouds. Beside me, Aaron reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture as familiar as my own heartbeat. "We're really doing this," I whispered, half to myself. "Yes, we are," he replied, his voice steady and sure. The first class. Cabin was spacious and comfortable, so different from the cramped economy seats we'd always insisted were perfectly fine on our infrequent trips to visit Aaron's sister in Florida. The flight attendant brought us champagne in real glass flutes, her smile warm as she offered congratulations on our Hawaiian Christmas adventure. "A toast," Aaron said, raising his glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, the crystal making a delicate sound as we clinked glasses. As the plane reached cruising altitude, I found myself mentally calculating the physical distance growing between us and our children. Every mile felt like both a separation and a liberation. I thought about the Christmas morning that would unfold without us. Carson and Lucy's perfectly orchestrated holiday with her parents, Brittany's family gathered around their designer tree. Would they miss us? Would they feel the absence of the traditions we'd maintained for decades? The cinnamon rolls I always baked, the stockings I still filled even for my adult children, the Christmas story Aaron read aloud each year? Or would they simply be relieved that the difficult older generation was out of the way, no longer complicating their plans with our presence? I pushed the thought aside. This trip wasn't about them. It was about us, about the black sand beaches I'd dreamed of walking along, about Aaron finally getting to snorkel in clear blue waters, about experiencing a Christmas defined by joy rather than obligation. The flight attendant brought our lunch, real china plates with gourmet meals rather than the plastic-wrapped sandwiches we were accustomed to. As we ate, Aaron and I reminisced about our early years together, the dreams we'd had, the plans we'd made before children and careers and responsibilities had redirected our course. "Do you remember our second anniversary?" Aaron asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "When we stayed up all night planning that cross-country road trip?" I laughed, the memory vivid and bittersweet. "We had the whole route mapped out. National parks, quirky roadside attractions, small towns neither of us had ever heard of. 3 months on the road," Aaron continued. "We were going to camp under the stars, take photographs at every stop, keep journals of all our adventures, and then I got pregnant with Carson," I said softly. "And the road trip got filed away in the someday category." Aaron nodded, his expression thoughtful. "So many things got filed under someday. The summer in Italy, the cooking classes in France, the whale watching in Alaska. Someday after the kids were in school," I added. "Someday after college tuition was paid. Someday after the weddings. Someday after the grandchildren were born." And somehow, someday never came. Aaron finished. Until now. I looked out the window at the vast expanse of blue sky above the clouds. "Better late than never?" He squeezed my hand. "Much better." After lunch, I opened the journal Aaron had given me, running my fingers over the smooth leather cover. On the first blank page, I began to write. December 22nd. En route to Hawaii for nearly 50 years, Aaron and I have put everyone else first. Our children, our grandchildren, even our children's in-laws. We've given our time, our energy, our savings, and our dreams to ensure their happiness and success. We've accepted being taken for granted, being dismissed, being treated as resources rather than people with our own needs and desires. Today, at ages 70 and 72, we are finally putting ourselves first. We are flying to Hawaii to spend Christmas, on black sand beaches instead of in Carson's perfectly decorated living room, where our presence was deemed unnecessary this year. Is it selfish to reclaim our right to joy? Our children certainly think so. They've made that abundantly clear with their accusations and guilt trips. But sitting here beside Aaron, watching the clouds drift beneath us as we fly toward a dream deferred for decades, I can't bring myself to regret this decision. This isn't just a vacation. It's a declaration that the remaining years of our lives belong to us, not as parents or grandparents or financial resources, but as Edith and Aaron, two people who chose each other long before anyone else entered the picture. I feel lighter. Already, as if I've set down a burden I didn't fully realize I was carrying until this moment. I continued writing as the flight progressed, pouring out thoughts and feelings I'd kept bottled inside for years. The act of putting them on paper was cathartic, each word a further step toward the liberation that had begun the moment we decided to go to Hawaii. Several hours into the flight, the pilot announced we were beginning our descent. Out the window, I caught my first glimpse of the islands. Emerald green mountains rising from a sapphire sea, wispy clouds clinging to volcanic peaks, shorelines edged with white sand beaches. The sight was so breathtaking that tears sprang to my eyes. "Oh, Aaron," I whispered, Look at that. He leaned across me to peer out the window, his face lighting up with wonder. It's even more beautiful than the pictures. As the plane descended further, details came into focus. Palm trees swaying in tropical breezes, red-roofed buildings scattered across lush landscapes, roads winding along coastlines that seemed to stretch endlessly into the distance. We should have done this years ago, Aaron said, his voice tinged with both awe and regret. We're doing it now, I reminded him. That's what matters. The landing was smooth, the tropical air warm and fragrant as we deplaned. The Kona airport was open air, so different from the enclosed terminals we were used to. Gentle breezes carried the scent of flowers and salt water, and somewhere nearby, musicians played traditional Hawaiian melodies on ukuleles. We collected our luggage and found our rental car with ease, a convertible, Aaron's splurge for the occasion. With the top down and warm air whipping through our hair, we drove along the coastal highway toward our rented condo in Kailua Kona. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over everything, palm trees silhouetted against a sky beginning to blush with sunset colors. Edith, Aaron said as we paused at a scenic overlook, the vast Pacific stretching before us. I've never seen anything like this. I stood beside him at the guardrail, taking in the panoramic view of coastline, ocean, and sky melding together in perfect harmony. Below us, waves crashed against black lava rock formations, sending plumes of white spray into the air. It was worth the wait, I said, though part of me couldn't help but wonder how many other breathtaking views we had missed by perpetually deferring our dreams. Aaron seemed to read my thoughts. We can't change the past, he said gently. We can only make different choices now. I nodded, leaning into him as he wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Different choices from now on. We arrived at our oceanfront condo just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in dramatic shades of orange, pink and purple. The property manager greeted us warmly, presenting us with traditional lei garlands of fragrant flowers before showing us to our accommodations. The condo was everything we had hoped for, spacious, beautifully decorated in island style with floor-to-ceiling windows offering unobstructed views of the Pacific. From the lanai, we could hear the gentle rhythm of waves breaking against the shore, a soothing cadence unlike anything in our snowbound hometown. After the property manager left, Aaron and I stood on the lanai together, watching the last light fade from the sky and the first stars appear above the vast ocean. Merry Christmas Eve, Aaron said softly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I leaned back against him, feeling the solid strength that had supported me through decades of life's challenges and joys. Merry Christmas Eve, I replied. In that moment, with the Hawaiian breeze caressing my skin and Aaron's arms around me, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where we were meant to be, not in Carson's perfectly coordinated Christmas tableau or Brittany's meticulously planned holiday gathering, but here, together, finally living the life we had earned through years of sacrifice and hard work. For Donrandi, the first time in longer than I could remember, I was exactly where I wanted to be, without guilt, without obligation, without anyone else's expectations shadowing my joy. It felt like freedom. It felt like coming home to myself. Our first morning in Hawaii dawned with spectacular clarity, sunlight streaming through the gaps in the curtains we'd forgotten to fully close the night before. I woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar sounds, ocean waves rather than the ticking of our antique grandfather clock, tropical birds instead of the neighborhood snowplows. Aaron was already up, and I found him on the lanai with a cup of coffee, gazing out at the ocean. He turned at the sound of my footsteps, his face more relaxed than I'd seen it in years. "Good morning," he said, extending his free arm to welcome me into the space beside him. "Coffee's fresh. And there's something you need to see." I followed his gesture toward the shoreline below our condo complex. There, not 200 yards from where we stood, was a black sand beach, smaller than the famous ones on the island, but unmistakable with its dramatic, dark shore contrasting against the turquoise water. "Oh," I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. I didn't realize we were so close to one. The property manager mentioned it when she called to confirm our booking last week, said it was a bit of a hidden gem, not in all the guidebooks, mostly frequented by locals. "I wanted to surprise you." I blinked back unexpected tears. "It's perfect." After a light breakfast on the lanai, we changed into swimwear and walked down to the beach. The black sand was warmer than I expected, fine-grained and surprisingly soft between my toes. We spread our beach towels under the shade of a palm tree and simply sat for a while, absorbing the beauty around us. "I can't believe we're really here," I said, watching the waves break gently along the shore. On December 23rd, sitting on a black sand beach in Hawaii instead of frantically finalizing Christmas preparations. Aaron stretched out beside me, his face tilted toward the sun. No last-minute shopping for stocking stuffers. No arguments about which side of the family gets Christmas Eve versus Christmas Day. No staying up until 2 a.m. wrapping presents. No mediating between Carson and Brittany about whose children get the most expensive gifts. No pretending to love whatever impersonal gift certificates they give us because they can't be bothered to think about what we might actually want. We looked at each other and burst into laughter, not bitter, but genuinely amused at the holiday stress we'd left behind. It felt like shedding an old, too tight skin, emerging lighter and freer on the other side. Later that morning, we ventured into the water. Aaron, true to his lifelong dream, had brought snorkeling gear, and he helped me adjust my mask before we waded into the gentle surf. The water was perfect, cool enough to be refreshing in the tropical heat, but warm enough to be comfortable. Beneath the surface was another world entirely, coral formations in fantastical shapes, fish in colors so vivid they seemed artificial, delicate sea plants swaying with the current. Aaron pointed excitedly at each new discovery, his face transformed with childlike wonder behind his mask. We spent hours exploring, coming back to shore only when hunger finally drove us to seek lunch. At a small beachside cafe, we feasted on fresh poke bowls and tropical fruit, our skins salt-dried and sun-warmed. "I've been thinking," Aaron said as we lingered over cold drinks, "about our discussion before we left, about changing our wills and financial arrangements." I nodded, curious where his thoughts had led him. What if, instead of just changing how, we leave things to Carson and Brittany, we actually use more of our money now? For us. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, enthusiasm lighting his features. "We've been so focused on preserving capital for them to inherit, on helping them with houses and schools and camps, but what if we designated a significant portion, say half of what we'd planned to leave them, for us to actually use while we're alive?" I considered this, stirring my iced tea thoughtfully. Use it how? Travel, for one thing. Not just this trip, but all those some days we kept postponing. The river cruise in Europe, the cooking classes in Italy, the whale watching in Alaska. His eyes grew more animated with each example. We could take the grandchildren on educational trips. Not Carson and Brittany, just us and the kids, showing them parts of the world their parents are too busy to explore with them. The idea was startling in its simplicity. We had always lived carefully, frugally, saving for our children's futures rather than spending on our present. The notion of deliberately using a significant portion of our savings for our own enjoyment felt almost transgressive and wonderfully liberating. "We've always been so careful," I said, giving voice to my thoughts. "Making sure we'd have enough for emergencies, enough to help the kids, enough to leave behind." Aaron nodded. "And we should still be prudent, keep enough for our care if we need it, for whatever life throws our way. But Edith, we're 70 and 72. If we don't start using some of this money for joy now, when will we? When indeed? The question hung between us, simple yet profound. Let's do it, I said, surprising myself with the immediacy of my decision. Let's create a living inheritance for ourselves, money specifically designated for experiences and memories while we still have the health and energy to enjoy them. Aaron's smile was radiant. Really? You're sure? Absolutely sure. We've earned this, Aaron. And frankly, I'm no longer convinced that leaving Carson and Brittany substantial inheritances would even be good for them. Maybe having less guaranteed to them will encourage more independence, more appreciation for what they do have. That's a good point. He reached across the table to take my hand. So it's decided? When we get home, we'll talk to our financial advisor about creating this fund for ourselves? It's decided. I squeezed his fingers, feeling a surge of excitement at this new direction. But I think we should include Marie Belle and the other grandchildren in our adventures whenever possible. They shouldn't miss out because of their parents' choices. Of course, Aaron agreed readily. Though I suspect Carson and Brittany might try to prevent that once they realize the bank of Mom and Dad is officially closed for regular withdrawals. I shrugged, a new confidence settling over me. They can try, but we're the grandparents, and we have rights too. If they want to deny their children experiences and relationships out of spite, that will be on them. We spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the small town nearest our condo, browsing in shops filled with local artwork, handcrafted jewelry, and island clothing. In one boutique, I tried on a flowing sundress in vibrant tropical colors, so different from the conservative, practical clothes that filled my closet at home. "What do you think?" I asked Aaron, twirling to show how the fabric moved. His eyes softened. "You look beautiful, like you belong here." I studied my reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at me. She seemed younger, somehow more vibrant. The vivid colors suited my silver hair and brought out warmth in my complexion I hadn't noticed before. "I'll take it," I told the shop assistant. "And that one as well," I added, pointing to a similar style in another tropical print. Aaron raised an eyebrow in pleased surprise. Back home, I would have agonized over buying even one new dress, calculating how many of Brittany's children's piano lessons or Carson's home improvement projects that money could fund instead. Not anymore. That evening, we dined at an open-air restaurant perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. As the sun set in a blaze of color over the Pacific, turning the sky into a canvas of orange, pink, and gold, a local musician played traditional Hawaiian music on a ukulele. The gentle melody floated around us, mingling with the sound of waves, breaking against the rocks below. "To us," Aaron said, raising his glass of local wine. "And to new foundations." "To us," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. "And to living fully, starting now." As darkness settled over the island and stars emerged in the velvet sky, I felt a profound sense of peace. We were building something new here, not just a vacation, but a new approach to the remaining years of our lives. A foundation based on mutual joy, shared experiences, and the recognition that our time was valuable, our happiness essential. Carson and Brittany would eventually have to adapt to this new reality. They might resist, might attempt to manipulate us back into our former roles as perpetual providers and accommodators. But sitting there with Aaron under the Hawaiian stars, I knew with absolute certainty that we wouldn't yield. We had found our way back to each other and to ourselves. That was a foundation worth protecting at all costs. Christmas Eve in Hawaii dawned with a brilliance that seemed almost surreal. Azure skies, gentle breezes carrying the scent of plumeria, waves breaking in perfect rhythm against the black sand. Beach. I woke early, leaving Aaron still peacefully asleep, and stepped onto our lanai with a cup of fresh coffee. In the distance, I could see boats dotting the horizon, Early morning snorkelers and fishermen already out on the water. A family with young children was setting up on the beach below, their excited voices carrying upward on the breeze. It was so different from the Christmas Eves I had known. No snow, no last-minute wrapping, no frantic preparation for family gatherings. Just peace. Just beauty. Just the present moment. I pulled out my journal and began to write, capturing my impressions of this extraordinary day in paradise. I was so absorbed in my thoughts that I didn't notice the woman approaching on the adjoining lanai until she spoke. "Good morning. You must be our new neighbors for the holiday week." I looked up to see a woman perhaps 10 years younger than myself, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a casual bun, her smile warm and inviting. "Yes, we just arrived yesterday," I replied. "I'm Edith." "Anna," she introduced herself. "My husband Milo and I own this unit. We live in Seattle most of the year but spend a month here every winter." She gestured toward the lounge chair across from mine. "May I join you for a moment?" "Of course," I said, finding myself genuinely pleased at the prospect of company. Back home, I might have felt obligated to make conversation with a neighbor, but here, it felt like a natural extension of the day's beauty. Anna settled into the chair, her own coffee mug in hand. "First time in Hawaii?" "Yes. It's been a dream of mine for decades, actually." "And you chose Christmas week for your first visit," she observed. "That's unusual for first-timers. Most people avoid the holiday rush." Something in her tone, not judgmental, just curious, made me feel comfortable sharing more. "We're actually here specifically because it's Christmas. It's our first holiday away from our children and grandchildren." Anna's eyebrows rose slightly. "By choice?" "Yes," I said, surprised by my own candor with this stranger. "Our son excluded us from the family Christmas this year in favor of his in-laws. Instead of sitting home alone feeling sorry for ourselves, we decided to finally take the trip we've been postponing for 40 years. Anna's expression was thoughtful. "That must have been a difficult decision." Surprisingly, it wasn't. Once, we realized how our children really see us, as financial resources and convenient babysitters, rather than as people with our own needs and dreams. The choice became very clear. She nodded slowly. "I understand more than you might think. Milo and I went through something similar with our daughter about 5 years ago." "Really?" I leaned forward, suddenly eager to hear about someone else's experience with adult children and boundaries. "She expected us to retire early to provide full-time childcare for her kids while she pursued a demanding career," Anna explained. "When we said no, that we loved our grandchildren but also loved our careers and weren't ready to give them up, she accused us of being selfish and uncaring." "That sounds familiar," I murmured. "It was a painful time," Anna continued. "She didn't speak to us for months, but eventually she came around. Had to find other childcare arrangements, of course, but ultimately our relationship improved because the expectations became healthier." "That's encouraging to hear," I said. "Our situation is still very fresh. I'm not sure what we'll find when we go back home." "Whatever happens," Anna said with gentle firmness, "stand your ground. The relationship you build on honest boundaries will ultimately be stronger than one built on resentful compliance." Her words resonated deeply, articulating something I had felt but hadn't fully formed into thought. Before I could respond, the sliding door behind Anna opened, and a distinguished-looking man with salt-and-pepper hair appeared. "There you are," he said fondly to Anna. "I wondered where you'd disappeared to." "Milo, this is Edith, our neighbor. For the week," Anna introduced us. "She and her husband are experiencing their first Hawaiian Christmas." "Welcome to paradise," Milo said with a warm smile. "And Merry Christmas Eve." "Speaking of which," Anna said, turning back to me, "Milo and I are hosting a small gathering tonight on the beach. Just a few friends, some local food and music. We'd love for you and your husband to join us." The invitation was unexpected but immediately appealing. "That's very kind of you. I'll check with Aaron, but I think we'd enjoy that very much. Wonderful. Anna stood, moving back toward her own unit. Around 6 o'clock, just down on the beach. Very casual. Just bring yourselves. After they left, I sat for a while longer, reflecting on the conversation. There was something validating about hearing Anna's similar experience, about knowing we weren't alone in setting boundaries with adult children. It felt like an affirmation of the path we had chosen. When Aaron woke and joined me on the lanai, I told him about the invitation. A beach party on Christmas Eve? He said, his face lighting up. Sounds perfect. We spent the day exploring the island, driving along winding coastal roads, stopping at scenic overlooks to admire views that seemed like something from a travel magazine. At one black sand beach, larger and more dramatic than the one near our Encanto, we walked hand in hand along the shore, collecting a few small volcanic stones as mementos. This is what Christmas should feel like, Aaron said, as we watched sea turtles sun themselves on the warm sand. Peaceful, joyful, present. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. For so many years, our holidays had been exercises in stress management, cooking elaborate meals to everyone's specifications, navigating family tensions, trying to ensure perfect experiences for our children and grandchildren, while our own enjoyment became secondary. This was different. This was Christmas distilled to its essence: wonder, gratitude, love. That evening, we made our way down to the beach where Anna and Milo had set up a small gathering. Tiki torches illuminated a circle of beach chairs around a low table laden with local foods. A few other couples were already there, drinks in hand, laughter floating on the evening breeze. Edith, Aaron. You made it, Anna greeted us warmly, introducing us to the others. Some fellow condo owners, some local friends they had made over years of visiting the island. To my surprise, conversation flowed easily. These strangers welcomed us as if we were old friends, sharing stories of their own holiday traditions, both conventional and unconventional. One couple had been spending Christmas in Hawaii for 20 years, ever since their children had moved abroad. Another pair were celebrating their retirement after 4 decades as schoolteachers. "How long are you staying on the island?" asked one woman, Marie, as she passed me a plate of fresh poke. "Until January 2nd, Aaron answered. "We wanted to experience New Year's here as well." "You must join us for the New Year's Day paddle then," Milo said enthusiastically. "We take outrigger canoes along the coast to greet the first sunrise of the year. It's become something of a tradition among our little group." "I've never been in an outrigger canoe," I admitted. "Is it difficult?" Marie laughed. "Not at all. The locals who guide us do all the real work. We just enjoy the ride and the spectacular views." "We'd love to join you," Aaron said, giving my hand a squeeze. "Wouldn't we, Edith?" I nodded, surprised at my own eagerness to try something so outside my usual comfort zone. Back home, I would have hesitated, worried about making a fool of myself or being the oldest person in the group. Here, those concerns seemed trivial compared to the opportunity for a new experience. As night fell completely, someone produced a ukulele, and the gathering turned musical. Traditional Hawaiian songs mingled with Christmas carols, creating a unique holiday soundtrack unlike anything I had ever experienced. Beneath a sky ablaze with stars, with the sound of waves providing a gentle backbeat, I found myself singing along, smiling at these new friends who had so warmly incorporated us into their celebrations. "Merry Christmas," Aaron whispered in my ear as midnight approached. "Merry Christmas," I whispered back, leaning against his shoulder. The merriest in a very long time. And it was true. Far from the snow and traditions of home, far from the complications of family dynamics and unfulfilled expectations, we had stumbled upon a different kind of Christmas. One filled with unexpected doorways to new friendships, new experiences, and new perspectives. As I looked around at the circle of fire-lit faces, I realized that this, too, was family of a sort. Not bound by blood or obligation, but by choice and genuine connection. And perhaps that was the most valuable discovery of all. That family could be found in unexpected places when we opened ourselves to the possibility. Christmas Day in Hawaii arrived with golden sunshine streaming through our bedroom windows. For a moment after waking, I experienced the familiar Christmas morning anticipation, that mixture of excitement and pressure that had accompanied holiday mornings for decades. Then I remembered where we were, and a different feeling washed over me, pure, uncomplicated joy. No need to rush downstairs to start breakfast for a house full of guests. No carefully choreographed gift opening to manage. No mediating between competing family factions or soothing hurt feelings over perceived gift inequities. Just Aaron and me, and a day entirely our own to shape. "Merry Christmas," Aaron murmured, rolling over to kiss me softly. "Merry Christmas," I replied, nestling against him for a moment before sitting up. "What should we do first on our Hawaiian Christmas?" He grinned, looking boyish despite his 72 years. "How about breakfast on the lanai, then a morning swim at our black sand beach?" Perfect. We moved through the morning at a leisurely pace, savoring fresh tropical fruits and Kona coffee on our oceanfront lanai. I wore one of my new sundresses, a flowing garment in shades of turquoise and coral that would have seemed impractically bright back home, but felt entirely right here in paradise. "You look different," Aaron observed as we walked hand in hand toward the beach. "Not just the dress, though that's lovely. There's something else." I considered this as we found a perfect spot under a palm tree and spread our beach towels. "I feel different," I admitted. "Lighter. More myself, somehow." "I know exactly what you mean," Aaron said, settling beside me on the warm black sand. "It's like we've been playing roles for so long that we forgot who we were beneath them. Mother, father, grandparents, financial supporters, babysitters, those roles became our entire identities. And now we're remembering there's more to us than that," I finished for him. "That we're still Edith and Aaron, two people who love adventure and beauty and new experiences. Two people who are actually quite fun when not weighed down by everyone else's expectations," he added with a wink. After our swim, we returned to the condo to shower and change for our Christmas lunch reservation. We'd booked a table at an elegant oceanfront restaurant that offered a traditional Christmas feast with a Hawaiian twist: roast turkey, accompanied by tropical fruits, local vegetables, and island-inspired desserts. I chose my second new sundress for the occasion, a deep crimson with delicate white floral patterns that somehow managed to feel both festive for Christmas and perfect for the tropical setting. Aaron whistled appreciatively when I emerged from the bedroom. "You are the most beautiful woman on this island," he declared, taking my hand and twirling me in a playful circle. I laughed, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. When was the last time he had looked at me that way? When was the last time I had given him reason to? At the restaurant, we were seated at a prime table overlooking the ocean. The dining room was tastefully decorated for Christmas, with tropical flowers arranged alongside more traditional holiday greenery. A pianist played Christmas carols with gentle island rhythms, and the staff greeted each guest with warm Mele Kalikimaka wishes. "This is nothing like any Christmas we've ever had," I said as our champagne was poured. "And yet it feels more like Christmas should feel than any holiday in recent memory," Aaron replied. He was right. Despite the absence of snow and stockings, and grandchildren tearing open presents, there was an authenticity to this celebration that had been missing from our holidays for years. We were present, truly present with each other, not distracted by hosting duties or family tensions or the thousand small stresses that had come to define the season. As we savored our meal, Aaron raised his glass. "A toast," he said, "to Edith Reynolds, who had the courage to break free from expectations and reclaim her joy. I've always loved you, but I think I'm falling in love with this version of you all over again." His words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "And to Aaron Reynolds," I countered, raising my own glass. Who has been my partner in everything for nearly 50 years, and who still surprises me with his sense of adventure and his willingness to start a new chapter even at 72. After lunch, we took a drive along the coast, stopping at a small botanical garden that specialized in native Hawaiian plants. As we wandered the peaceful pathways, I found myself drawn to the vibrant colors and unusual shapes of flowers I'd never seen before. "Look at how these have adapted to thrive in volcanic soil," said a voice behind us. I turned to find a woman perhaps a few years older than myself, wearing a volunteer badge and a wide-brimmed hat. "These plants have evolved to flourish in conditions that would kill most mainland species." "That's remarkable," I said, examining the delicate blooms emerging from what looked like barren black rock. "Nature's great at reinvention," the woman, her badge identified her as Dorothy, continued. "These plants don't waste energy wishing for different circumstances. They just figure out how to bloom where they're planted, so to speak." Her words struck me as profoundly meaningful, though I knew she was simply sharing botanical information. How much of my life had I spent wishing for different circumstances instead of adapting and thriving within the reality I had? "Are you visiting for the holidays?" Dorothy asked. "Yes, our first Hawaiian Christmas," Aaron replied. "A big change from our usual family gatherings back home." "Sometimes change is exactly what we need," Dorothy said with a knowing smile. "I came here for a 2-week vacation 30 years ago and never left. Best decision I ever made." "You just stayed?" I asked, intrigued by this glimpse into a life so different from my carefully planned existence. "Packed up my mainland life, sold most of what I owned, and started fresh at 53, she confirmed. "My children thought I'd lost my mind. Now they love having a mom with a guest room in paradise." We chatted with Dorothy for nearly an hour as she showed us through the garden, pointing out her favorite specimens and sharing stories of her reinvented island life. By the time we said goodbye, I felt as though we'd made another new friend, something that rarely happened in our settled routine back home. "She's remarkable," I said as we walked back to our car. To just completely change her life like that, at 53. "We're doing something similar," Aaron pointed out. "Maybe not as dramatic as moving to Hawaii permanently, but we're definitely reinventing ourselves and our expectations for this chapter of life." I considered this as we drove back toward our condo, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the landscape. He was right. While our Hawaii trip might have begun as a reaction to being excluded from Christmas festivities, it had evolved into something much more significant, a reclamation of self, a rediscovery of joy, a reinvention of how we defined family and celebration and purpose. That evening, we joined Anna and Milo for a sunset walk along the beach. As we strolled, Anna linked her arm through mine, creating an easy camaraderie that felt as though we'd known each other for years rather than days. "How was your Christmas?" she asked. "Wonderful," I replied honestly. "Different from any we've ever experienced, but wonderful in ways I hadn't anticipated." "Holidays have a way of becoming performance art in families," Anna observed. "So much pressure to maintain traditions, meet expectations, create perfect memories. Sometimes we forget to actually enjoy the day ourselves." "Exactly," I exclaimed, grateful for her understanding. "That's exactly what happened to us over the years. The holidays became about making sure everyone else was happy, everyone else's preferences were accommodated. Somewhere along the way, Aaron and I became stagehands in our own family's Christmas production. And now?" Milo asked, walking alongside Aaron just ahead of us. "Now we're the leading actors in our own story again," Aaron replied, glancing back with a smile that warmed me from within. As darkness fell and stars emerged above the Pacific, we shared a simple dinner of leftovers from the Christmas feast, eaten on our lanai with the sound of waves providing perfect accompaniment. No elaborate table settings, no tension-filled conversations, no checking of watches to coordinate with other family commitments. Later, as we prepared for bed, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror and paused, studying the woman reflected. There. She looked relaxed, her face free of the worry lines that had become so familiar. Her posture was straight, confident, undiminished by others' perceptions or expectations. This, I realized, was not just a vacation version of myself. This was who I truly was, who I had always been beneath the layers of accommodation and compromise I'd wrapped around my authentic self. This was Edith Reynolds, not just mother of Carson and Brittany, not just grandmother to their children, not just Aaron's wife, but a woman in her own right, with dreams and desires and a capacity for joy that had lain dormant for too long. Like her, I whispered to my reflection. I think I'll keep her, even when we go home. The days after Christmas passed in a blissful rhythm of beach mornings, island explorations, and evenings spent with our new friends. We snorkeled with tropical fish, hiked to a small waterfall hidden in dense rainforest, and even took a helicopter tour over active volcanic areas, the glowing lava flows at sunset creating a spectacle unlike anything we'd ever witnessed. Throughout it all, my phone remained off. Aaron checked his messages briefly each evening, just enough to confirm there were no true emergencies requiring our attention. But otherwise, we existed in a bubble of contentment, far removed from the family drama we'd left behind. Until December 29th, when reality intruded in a way we couldn't ignore. We had just returned from a morning catamaran cruise along the coast when the concierge at our condo complex approached us in the lobby. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, there's a gentleman asking for you at the front desk. He says he's your son. Aaron and I exchanged startled glances. Our son? Carson is here? In Hawaii? The concierge nodded. He arrived about 20 minutes ago. Seems quite determined to see you. My heart began pounding, a mixture of emotions washing over me. Surprise, confusion, a flicker of alarm, and something else I couldn't immediately identify. I looked at Aaron, silently asking what he wanted to do. We'll see him, Aaron decided after a moment. Please tell him we'll meet him on the Common Lanai in 10 minutes. As we took the elevator to our floor, I tried to process this development. How did he even find us? We didn't tell them exactly where we were staying. Aaron sighed. My guess? He called our credit card company claiming some kind of emergency access. Or maybe tracked our phone locations, though mine has been mostly off. Why would he fly all the way to Hawaii? It must be something serious. Maybe, Aaron said, his tone suggesting he had other theories. Let's change quickly and find out. 10 minutes later, we walked onto the condo complex's shared lanai, a beautiful space overlooking the ocean, with comfortable seating areas arranged to take advantage of the spectacular views. Carson was standing at the railing, his back to us, shoulders tense beneath his lightweight jacket. Carson, I called softly. He turned, and I was struck by how tired he looked. Dark circles under his eyes, his normally clean-shaven face showing stubble, his expression a mixture of relief and something like anger. Mom. Dad. His voice was flat. You're really here. As you can see, Aaron replied evenly. The question is, why are you here? Carson ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he'd had since childhood when feeling stressed. Because you two vanished off the face of the earth without a word. Do you have any idea what we've been going through? The kids were devastated when you weren't there for Christmas. Marie Belle cried all day. Milo kept asking where his grandma and grandpa were. I felt a sharp pang at the thought of my grandchildren being upset, but I also remembered clearly that we hadn't vanished without a word. We'd been explicitly excluded from the family Christmas, and we'd made our plans known before leaving. Carson, I said carefully, you told us yourself that you wanted a smaller gathering this year with just Lucy's parents. We respected your wishes and made alternative plans, which we informed both you and Brittany about before we left. I never said you couldn't come for Christmas, he protested. though I could see in his eyes that he knew this wasn't entirely true. Perhaps not in those exact words, Aaron agreed, his voice calm but firm. But you made it very clear that our presence wasn't a priority this year. So instead of sitting home alone feeling sorry for ourselves, we decided to finally take the trip we've been postponing for decades. Carson's face flushed. This is ridiculous. You're both acting like teenagers having some kind of rebellion, running off to Hawaii, turning off your phones, ignoring all our messages. We're not teenagers, Carson, I interrupted. We're 70 and 72. We've spent our entire adult lives putting our children's needs and wants before our own. For once, we decided to prioritize our happiness. That's not rebellion. It's healthy self-care, he scoffed. Self-care? Is that what you're calling this irresponsible behavior? Do you have any idea how worried we've been? Brittany's been beside herself thinking something might have happened to you. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Yet neither of you were concerned enough to check on us before Christmas when we told you about our travel plans. In fact, as I recall, you both continued to call with various demands and complaints right up until we left. Carson had the grace to look momentarily abashed before rallying. Look, whatever misunderstanding happened before, the point is that you need to come home now. The family's in chaos. Lucy's parents had to leave early because her father wasn't feeling well. Brittany and Thomas had a huge fight on Christmas Day. The kids are all upset. Everything's falling apart, and it's because you two decided to abandon your family during the holidays. I felt a flicker of irritation at his attempt to place the blame for the family's dysfunction on our shoulders. Carson, I'm sorry your Christmas didn't go as planned, but Aaron and I are not responsible for the tensions between Brittany and Thomas, or for Lucy's father's health, or for any other family problems that would have occurred whether we were present or not. But you could help fix things if you came home now, he insisted. The kids need stability. They need their grandparents. The same grandparents you told Milo were too old for fun? I asked quietly. Carson flinched. I never— Yes, you did, Aaron cut in. Milo repeated it to us directly, along with the comments you made after Thanksgiving about how much easier Christmas would be without having to manage our expectations this year. Carson's face drained of color. Who told you that? Does it matter? I asked. What matters is that it was said, and it was meant, and it's part of a pattern of dismissing and devaluing us that has been going on for years. A tense silence fell between us. In the background, waves crashed against the shore, and distant laughter from beachgoers floated up on the breeze, a surreal counterpoint to the family confrontation unfolding on the lanai. Finally, Carson spoke. Again, his voice lower, more controlled. I admit I may have said some things I didn't mean. We all do that sometimes. But isn't forgiveness part of being a family? Can't we move past this? Forgiveness requires acknowledgement and change, Aaron replied. Not just smoothing things over to return to the status quo where your mother and I exist primarily to serve your convenience. Carson's eyes narrowed. Is that what this is really about? You feel underappreciated? Fine, I apologize. We appreciate everything you do for us. Now can we please focus on what's important? Getting. You both home where you belong? I shook my head, both at his dismissive apology and at his continued assumption that we should drop everything and rush back at his command. Carson, we're not going anywhere. Our trip doesn't end until January 2nd, and we intend to stay for every moment of it. You can't be serious. His voice rose slightly. You'd choose a vacation over your family's needs? We're choosing to honor our commitments to ourselves, I corrected him. Something we should have done years ago. Carson's expression hardened. This isn't like you, Mom. Either of you. You've always put family first. Always. And we still value family deeply, Aaron assured him. But somewhere along the way, putting family first became code for sacrificing our own needs and dreams to accommodate everyone else's demands. That's not healthy for anyone. Not for us. And honestly, not For you and Brittany either. Carson paced a few steps, clearly struggling to process this shift in dynamic. So that's it? You're just changing the rules? After all these years? We're not changing the rules, I said gently. We're changing our response to them. We're still your parents. We still love you and your sister and all our grandchildren dearly. But we're also Edith and Aaron, two people with our own lives, our own relationship, our own dreams that deserve respect and priority. He stared at us for a long moment, as if seeing strangers where his parents should be. I wondered what he was thinking. If he was finally recognizing us as full human beings with needs and desires independent of our roles in his life, or if he was simply calculating a new approach to get what he wanted. The kids really do miss you, he said finally, his voice softer. Especially Milo. He keeps asking when you're coming back. We miss them too, I said truthfully. And we'll be home in 4 days. Perhaps you could take a picture of us here to show them? Let them know we're safe and happy and thinking of them? It was an olive branch of sorts, and after a moment's hesitation, Carson nodded, pulling out his phone. Aaron and I stood together at the railing, the brilliant blue Pacific spread out behind us, sunshine illuminating our faces. We smiled. Genuine smiles. Not the strained expressions we'd worn in so many family photos over the years, where we'd been trying to keep the peace or accommodate everyone's preferences. Got it, Carson said, looking at the result. You both look different, younger somehow. We feel younger, Aaron admitted. Lighter, happier. A complicated expression crossed Carson's face. Confusion, perhaps a flicker of recognition, or even envy. I should get back to the airport, he said abruptly. I booked a return flight for this evening, assuming you'd be coming with me. I'm sorry you made that assumption, I said, meaning it. Despite everything, he was still my son, and I didn't enjoy seeing him disappointed or having wasted time and money on a fruitless mission. He nodded stiffly, then turned to leave. At the last moment, he paused and looked back. When you get home, things will be different, won't they? Between all of us. It wasn't really a question, but I answered anyway. Yes, Carson, things will be different. Better, I hope, in the long run. More honest, more balanced, but definitely different. He nodded again, and then he was gone, walking away without another word, his shoulders slightly bent as if carrying an unexpected burden. Aaron and I remained at the railing, watching until he disappeared from view. Then Aaron slipped his arm around my waist, pulling me gently against him. You okay? He asked quietly. I considered the question seriously before answering. Yes, I said finally. Sad that it had to come to this, but glad we held our ground. It was the right thing to do. It was, he agreed. For everyone, though Carson may not see that yet. As we turned to walk back to our condo, I realized what the unidentified emotion had been when I first heard Carson was here. Relief. Relief that confronting the past hadn't shaken my newfound sense of self, hadn't undermined my commitment to this healthier path forward. The old patterns had been tested, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, they had not prevailed. That day after Carson's unexpected visit dawned with a brilliant sunrise that bathed our condo in golden light. I had slept surprisingly well, unburdened by the guilt that might once have plagued me after such a confrontation. Instead, I felt a quiet sense of pride in myself, in Aaron, in our shared commitment to maintaining the healthy boundaries we'd established. Over breakfast on the lanai, Aaron checked his phone briefly, his expression thoughtful. Carson made it home safely, he reported. And apparently he shared that photo of us with the family. How do you know? He handed me his phone. There was a text message from Marie Bell. Grandpa, you and Grandma look so happy in Hawaii. Dad showed us the picture. The beach behind you is beautiful. Can you bring me a seashell when you come home? The simple, sweet message brought tears to my eyes. She's not angry with us for missing Christmas. Children are often more adaptable than adults give them credit for, Erin observed, and more perceptive. She can see we're happy, and that matters to her. I nodded, handing the phone back. Are there messages from Brittany or Carson? Several, he admitted. But nothing that requires our immediate attention. I'll respond to Marie Belle, and the rest can wait until we're ready. He typed a quick, affectionate reply to our granddaughter, promising not just a seashell, but several interesting treasures from the island. Then he set the phone aside, signaling that our focus would remain on our Hawaiian experience, not on managing family dynamics from afar. We spent the morning snorkeling at a nearby cove that Milo had recommended, marveling at the colorful fish and intricate coral formations beneath the clear turquoise water. In the afternoon, we joined Anna and Dorothy for a pottery workshop at a local artist's studio, creating simple but meaningful souvenirs of our time on the island. Throughout the day, I found myself reflecting on Carson's visit and its implications. While part of me was saddened by the tension, a stronger part recognized this confrontation as necessary. A testing of the boundaries we'd established, a clarification of our new relationship dynamic. You're quiet today, Anna observed as we shaped clay between our fingers. Is it because of your son's visit? Milo mentioned he saw a young man who looked upset leaving your condo yesterday. Word traveled quickly in the small community we'd temporarily joined. Yes, I admitted. Carson flew all the way from home, expecting to convince us to return early. And you didn't, she stated, rather than asked. No, we didn't. I smoothed a rough edge on my pottery piece. It would have sent the wrong message, that our time, our choices, our happiness are less important than whatever family drama is unfolding in our absence. Anna nodded approvingly. Good for you. The first test of new boundaries is always the hardest. It gets easier. Does it? I asked, genuinely curious about her experience. Your daughter eventually accepted your boundaries, you said. She did, though not without some difficult moments along the way. Anna's hands worked steadily on her clay as she spoke. There were tears, accusations, even a few months of very limited contact. But eventually, she realized that our relationship was stronger and healthier with clear boundaries than it had been when everything was on her terms. I hope we reach that point with Carson and Brittany, I said softly. I don't want to lose my relationship with them or with my grandchildren. I just want it to be more balanced, more respectful. Keep holding steady, Anna advised. Don't yield on the important things, but look for opportunities to connect in new, healthier ways. Eventually, they'll adapt, especially if they see that your boundaries aren't about rejecting them, but about honoring yourself. Her words stayed with me throughout the afternoon and into the evening, when Erin and I enjoyed a quiet dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the harbor. As twilight descended, painting the sky in watercolor hues of pink and lavender, I shared my thoughts with him. I think this is the real test, I said. Not just taking this trip, not just standing our ground when Carson showed up, but maintaining these boundaries when we go home. It would be so easy to slip back into old patterns. Erin reached across the table to take my hand. We won't let that happen, he promised. This isn't just a vacation alternative, Edith. It's a turning point. We've remembered who we are beyond our roles as parents and grandparents, and I have no intention of forgetting again. I squeezed his fingers, drawing strength from his conviction. Nor do I. Besides, he added with a small smile, we have our living inheritance fund to plan for when we get home. All those someday dreams we're finally going to pursue. The thought sent a thrill of anticipation through me. We'd already discussed using part of our newly designated personal fund for the European river cruise in the spring, and perhaps a cooking class in Tuscany the following fall. Travel was just the beginning. There were art classes I wanted to take, and Aaron had mentioned joining a local hiking group. For the first time in decades, I was looking forward to the future with genuine excitement rather than a sense of duty or obligation. Whatever challenges awaited us upon our return home, whatever resistance Carson and Brittany might still offer to our new boundaries, I knew we were strong enough to face them together. That night, as we fell asleep to the sound of waves breaking against the shore, I felt completely at peace. We had confronted the past, held firm in our resolve, and were moving forward into a future that honored both our family relationships and our own needs and dreams. The balance we had struck felt right, like coming home to ourselves while still leaving room to love others from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. News of Carson's dramatic visit to Hawaii spread quickly, through our family network and beyond. By New Year's Eve, our phones began lighting up with messages not just from our children and grandchildren, but from extended family members, old friends, and even acquaintances from our hometown who had somehow heard portions of the story. "Your sister called," Aaron told me as we prepared for the New Year's Eve beach party Anna and Milo were hosting. "She wants to know if we've come to our senses yet, or if we're still abandoning our family responsibilities." I sighed, fastening a pair of pearl earrings that complemented my festive linen dress, another new purchase that I would have considered frivolous just weeks ago. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Marie Belle has always been quick to judge without hearing both sides. There was also a text from Lucy's mother, Aaron continued, scrolling through his phone. Apparently, she's deeply concerned about our erratic behavior and hopes we'll seek appropriate help when we return home. Despite the seriousness of the situation, I couldn't help but laugh. Appropriate help? For taking a vacation that we paid for ourselves? For choosing to spend Christmas in a beautiful location rather than being excluded from family celebrations? The nerve of that woman. Aaron set his phone down, his expression thoughtful. It's interesting, isn't it? How quickly people rush to judge when someone steps outside the expected boundaries, especially older people like us. As if turning 70 means we should quietly fade into the background and exist only to support the younger generations. Or as if setting healthy boundaries is somehow selfish when you're a grandparent, I added, smoothing my dress. No one seems concerned about whether Carson and Lucy were being selfish by excluding us from Christmas in the first place, Aaron nodded, adjusting his collar in the mirror. People see what they expect to see. They've always known us as the dependable parents and grandparents who prioritize everyone else's needs. When we finally prioritize our own, it challenges their comfortable narratives. Well, they'll just have to adjust their narratives, I said, with newfound confidence. Because I have no intention of going back to the way things were. The New Year's Eve celebration was a joyous affair, held on the beach under strings of twinkling lights. Anna and Milo had arranged for a local band to provide music, and tables laden with food and drinks lined the edge of the sand. Tiki torches cast a warm glow over the gathering, their flames dancing in the gentle evening breeze. As midnight approached, our newfound friends formed a circle near the water's edge, plastic champagne flutes in hand. Anna called for everyone's attention, raising her glass. "Before we toast the new year, I'd like to follow our tradition of each sharing one thing we're grateful for from the past year, and one hope for the year ahead." The circle moved clockwise, each person offering thoughtful reflections. When my turn came, I took a deep breath, surprised by the emotion welling up inside me. I'm grateful for the wake-up call that pushed Aaron and me to finally take this trip we've dreamed of for decades, I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to form, and my hope for the new year is that we continue to honor ourselves while finding new, healthier ways to connect with our family. Murmurs of approval and understanding rippled through the circle. These people, most of whom we'd known for barely a week, seemed to grasp what we were going through in ways our own family couldn't or wouldn't. After Aaron's turn, he expressed gratitude for rediscovering my remarkable wife beyond her role as mother and grandmother, and hope for many more adventures together. Anna squeezed my hand warmly. Not everyone will understand the choices you're making, she whispered. But those who matter will eventually come around, and those who don't come around perhaps didn't matter as much as you thought. As midnight struck and fireworks burst over the ocean, Aaron and I shared a kiss that felt symbolically significant, not just welcoming a new year, but embracing a new chapter in our lives together. Around us, our new friends cheered and hugged, the celebration lasting well into the early hours of the morning. The following day, as we participated in the New Year's Day outrigger canoe paddle that Milo had invited us to join, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a social media alert, something I rarely paid attention to, as my accounts were, mainly used to keep up with family photos and announcements. During a break on a small secluded beach, I checked the message and was surprised to find that Brittany had posted publicly about our troubling holiday choices. The post described how Aaron and I had abandoned family traditions and chosen a selfish vacation over the grandchildren's happiness, concluding with concern about the increasing self-centeredness of the older generation. The comments section was divided. Some, mainly Brittany's friends and Lucy's relatives, expressed sympathy for our children's position and concern about our mental state. Others, particularly people our age, defended our right to enjoy our retirement and set boundaries. One comment stood out from a woman I'd worked with years ago. After decades of sacrifice raising children and helping with grandchildren, don't Edith and Aaron deserve some joy of their own? Why is it selfish when grandparents prioritize themselves occasionally, but not when adult children expect constant support and availability on their terms? I showed the phone to Aaron, who read through the post and comments with a raised eyebrow. "Well," he said finally, "it seems we've become somewhat controversial in our old age." "Apparently so," I agreed, surprised to find I wasn't particularly upset by Brittany's public airing of family matters. "What do you think we should do? Respond? Ask? Her to take it down?" Aaron considered for a moment, then shook his head. "I think we should do absolutely nothing. We don't need to defend or explain our choices to the court of public opinion. We know why we're here and what we're doing. That's enough." I nodded, slipping the phone back into my bag. He was right. The judgments of others, whether supportive or critical, were ultimately far less important than our own inner certainty that we were on the right path. As we pushed the outrigger canoe back into the crystal-clear water to continue our New Year's paddle, I realized that freedom from the need for others' approval was perhaps the most significant boundary we had established, and the most liberating. Our final days in Hawaii passed with a bittersweet quality, each moment precious precisely because we knew it was coming to an end. We filled those days with experiences rather than souvenirs, collecting memories that would sustain us through the winter months ahead. A sunrise hike to a volcanic crater, an afternoon learning traditional lei-making from a local artisan, evenings spent in conversation with our new friends on the beach as stars appeared overhead. On our last full day, Aaron and I returned to the black sand beach where we had first experienced the magic of the island. We spread our towels in the same spot beneath a swaying palm tree and sat in comfortable silence, watching waves break along the shore. "I've been thinking," I said finally, "about what this trip has taught us." Aaron turned toward me, his expression open and attentive. "And what have you concluded, Professor Reynolds?" he teased gently. I smiled at the old nickname. He had called me that in our early years whenever I grew philosophical. "That living fully requires courage," I began. "The courage to recognize when patterns no longer serve you. The courage to disappoint others in order to be true to yourself. The courage to redefine relationships even when it's uncomfortable." Aaron nodded thoughtfully. "That resonates with me. I would add that it's never too late to reclaim joy. We spent decades believing that our purpose was primarily to serve our children's needs and wants. It took us until our 70s to remember that we also matter, that our dreams and desires haven't expired just because we've grown older. Exactly, I agreed. And I'm struck by how quickly we internalize the message that setting boundaries is somehow selfish, especially as parents and grandparents. As if loving someone means always being available, always saying yes, always putting their preferences before your own. When in fact, Aaron continued, the healthiest love has boundaries. It respects the personhood of everyone involved. It doesn't demand self-erasure from either party. We fell silent again, watching a young family playing at the water's edge, parents helping a toddler dip hesitant toes into the gentle surf. I wondered if they would navigate family dynamics more wisely than we had, or if they too would gradually lose themselves in the roles of parent and provider. Do you have regrets? I asked Aaron suddenly. About waiting so long to make this change? About all the trips we didn't take? The experiences we postponed? He considered the question seriously before answering. Not regrets exactly. Raising Carson and Brittany gave us profound joy too. But I do wish we had found a better balance earlier, that we hadn't swung so far toward sacrifice that we lost sight of ourselves in the process. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. I keep thinking about something Dorothy said, about how Hawaiian plants adapt to flourish in volcanic soil instead of wishing for different circumstances. I think that's what we're doing now. We can't change the patterns of the past 40 years, but we can adapt going forward. We can bloom differently in this stage of life. I like that image, Aaron said, reaching for my hand. And I like who we're becoming in this volcanic soil stage of life. I like it very much. Later that afternoon, as we began the process of packing for our return flight the next day, I found myself handling each new item of clothing I had purchased. On the island, the flowing sundresses, the comfortable sandals, the colorful scarves, I realized I was not just packing physical items, but also tangible reminders of the woman I had rediscovered here. Confident, joyful, unapologetic about taking up space in the world. I'm bringing her home with me, I said aloud, carefully folding a turquoise dress into my suitcase. Bringing who home? Aaron asked, looking up from his own packing. This version of myself, I explained. The Edith who wears bright colors and tries new activities and says no when something doesn't feel right. The Edith who remembers that she exists beyond her roles as mother and grandmother. Aaron's expression softened. I'm very fond of that. Edith, he said. Always have been, even when she was hiding beneath cardigans in practical colors and saying yes to everyone's demands. I laughed, recognizing the gentle teasing for the love it was. And I'm bringing home the Aaron who plans adventures instead of just home repairs, who talks about European river cruises instead of how to help Carson with his latest renovation project. He's excited to be returning as well, Aaron assured me with a wink. Though perhaps not entirely looking forward to the family conversations awaiting us. That sobered me slightly. Despite the peace and clarity we had found in Hawaii, reality awaited us at home. Carson and Brittany's resistance to our new boundaries, the necessary but potentially difficult conversations about financial expectations, the renegotiation of our roles in the family dynamic. We'll face it together, I said, voicing the thought aloud. Just as we always have, Aaron agreed. But this time with a clearer sense of what we're protecting, not just our resources, but our right to joy in these golden years. That evening, we joined Anna, Milo, Dorothy, and the others for a farewell dinner at a restaurant overlooking the harbor. Under a canopy of stars, with tiki torches illuminating the faces of these new friends who had welcomed us so warmly, we shared stories and laughter, exchanged contact information, and promised to stay in touch. You must come back next Christmas, Anna insisted, embracing me warmly. Make it a new tradition, one that celebrates your independence rather than reinforcing old obligations. We'd like that very much, I replied, surprised by how immediately appealing the idea was, not as a permanent abandonment of family holidays, but as an alternating rhythm, some years with the family on their terms, some years on our own, pursuing what brought us joy. As I looked around the table at these people, who had entered our lives so briefly yet meaningfully, I realized another truth. Family wasn't defined solely by blood or legal ties. Family could be found in unexpected places, created through genuine connection rather than obligation. These people had seen and appreciated us as full human beings, not just as convenient grandparents or financial resources, and that recognition had been profoundly healing. "Whatever happens when you get home," Dorothy said as we prepared to leave, "remember what you learned here. Not just about Hawaii, but about yourselves." "We will," Aaron promised, his arm steady around my waist. Some lessons are too important to forget. Walking back to our condo beneath a canopy of stars, I felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever challenges awaited us at home, we were returning with something precious and irreplaceable. The wisdom that comes from remembering your own worth, from reclaiming your right to joy, from establishing that love doesn't require self-erasure. It had taken us 70 years to learn these lessons. But as Aaron had said, better late than never. Our return flight to the mainland carried us through time zones and weather patterns, from the tropical warmth of Hawaii back to the winter chill of home. As the plane began its final descent, I gazed out the window at the snow-covered landscape. Below, so different from the black sand beaches and palm trees we had left behind, yet familiar in its own way. "Ready?" Aaron asked, squeezing my hand as the wheels touched down. "Ready," I confirmed, feeling a calm certainty that surprised me. The house was exactly as we had left it, quiet, undecorated, slightly chilly until Aaron adjusted the thermostat. Yet it felt different somehow, as if the space itself recognized that its occupants had changed. I moved through the rooms with new eyes, seeing possibilities rather than limitations, noticing beauty in the simplicity we had cultivated over decades together. We had deliberately scheduled our return for early afternoon, giving ourselves time to settle in before any family interactions. By unspoken agreement, we waited until after dinner to turn our phones back on, bracing ourselves for the barrage of notifications that would undoubtedly await. The messages came exactly as expected. Concerned texts from Brittany, demanding ones from Carson, confused questions from the grandchildren, unsolicited opinions from extended family members. We read through them together, not responding immediately, but discussing how we wanted to proceed. "I think we should invite them all over this weekend," I suggested. "Have one clear conversation about how things will work going forward, rather than addressing each complaint or demand individually." Aaron nodded. "A family meeting of sorts, setting expectations without apology or defensiveness." Exactly. I composed a simple message to both Carson and Brittany, inviting them and their families for Sunday lunch, mentioning that we had returned safely and looked forward to seeing everyone and sharing tales from our trip. With that task completed, I made myself a cup of tea and joined Aaron in the living room, where he had started a fire in the fireplace. The warmth and flickering light created a cozy atmosphere against the winter night outside our windows. "You know," I said, settling beside him on the sofa. "I've been wondering if we should redecorate a bit. Nothing dramatic, but perhaps some brighter colors, some artwork that reflects this new chapter." Aaron smiled, his arm coming around my shoulders, to draw me closer. "I think that's an excellent idea. This house should reflect who we are now, not just who we've been." We spent that evening and the days that followed re-establishing our home rhythm, but with subtle differences that reflected our Hawaiian epiphanies. I wore my new colorful clothes rather than returning to my practical neutral wardrobe. Aaron researched local hiking groups and photography classes rather than immediately tackling Carson's list of home improvement requests. We contacted our financial advisor to begin establishing the living inheritance fund we had discussed. When Sunday arrived, bringing with it our first family confrontation, we were ready, centered in our new truth, committed to maintaining. Healthy boundaries, but also genuinely excited to see our grandchildren and share the appropriate parts of our adventure with them. As the doorbell rang, Aaron and I exchanged a look of perfect understanding. This wasn't the end of our family relationships, far from it. But it was the beginning of a new normal, one where love and connection existed alongside respect for our autonomy and recognition of our worth beyond our familial roles. "Here we go," Aaron said, moving to answer the door. I followed, stepping confidently into our new reality, ready to demonstrate through words and actions the most valuable lesson Hawaii had taught us: that at any age, it's possible to reclaim your joy, redefine your boundaries, and remember that you are more than the roles you play in others' lives. The door opened to reveal our family waiting on the porch, their expressions a mixture of concern, confusion, and curiosity. Behind them, the winter sun broke through the clouds, illuminating everything with unexpected brilliance. It felt like a promise, of challenges certainly, but also of a future rich with possibility, authenticity, and joy. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.